Happy Monday, everybody. Welcome to the Sean O'Connell Show. I'm glad to be with you once again after a protracted absence that I can blame on nobody but myself. Very excited to be back in the chair talking about, well, a lot of different things on the show today. James Peterson is behind the glass to produce, as is always the case. Ari Temkin is going to join us. Sean Mooney is going to join us. And Sammy Mora, as Utah football is in spring football mode. The Morgan Scalley era that began with a bowl game victory is now more firmly entrenching itself into all of our psyches. Psyche? Collective? Psyche? Psyches? It sounds wrong to say psyches as a plural word. In any case, you got your leadership council announcement. We'll break some of that down. I had this whole list of things as I was preparing to come back. So I was in Uganda, then Tanzania, then Madrid, Spain to call PFL action. That's where I've been these last couple of weeks. And about Thursday, I'm sitting in Madrid and like, okay, here's what has happened in the time I've been gone. I'm going to cobble together some hopefully decent conversations about the things that happened that I missed. And hopefully people will be all right with me revisiting that. And then as the weekend started to come, just a bombshell of public information request follow-ups from Utah football, Utah, the Kyle Whittingham exit at the University of Utah. A storyline, by the way, that we are all best served to just be done with and to move on from. The hardworking folks on the beats and the journalists in our market wanted to get more definitive answers. And look, depending on which portion of the fan base you talk to, the thin and sparse wit loyalists, the folks that are excited about Morgan Scalley in the future, the folks that are like, I trust in Mark Harlan, I trust no matter what. Like, there's always different opinions on the way this thing worked out. And we now have seen the emails, okay? Here's what you know. Kyle Whittingham wanted to come back. He wanted a raise. He wanted more time. He wanted more resources. Utah said, all right, if you're going to come back, you're going to have no more money. You're going to have no more resources. And Morgan Scalley, starting now, right? The deadline was February. Starting in February, Morgan Scalley is going to have final decision-making on all personnel, player personnel, and on all coaching personnel. Which, to my knowledge, is not a relationship that exists anywhere else in college football. So I believe that the design of that response was like, oh, you want to stay? Okay. If you'd like to stay, we're happy to keep you, but the transition is happening while you're in the chair. Your lead assistant, your defensive coordinator, your heir apparent is now really the decision maker in the program. Now, in those emails, you saw nothing about who gets to decide whether you're kicking field goals against your rival. You saw nothing about whether you're going for it on fourth down or not, right? You didn't see anything like that. But effectively, it was a message like, okay, if you want to stay here and be the figurehead, but in reality, Morgan Scalley is going to make these decisions. And there's no way Kyle Whittingham was going to agree to that, so he didn't. All right, we know that. And then there was a separation agreement, $13.5 million, which, you know, I'm a miser. I'm cheap. I've been hearing too much about lack of resources in different programs and lack of resources and worry about resources and does this donor want to pay for this? And I don't know. And you know, we've had too many conversations and too many worries about money, even at the University of Utah, where things are going pretty darn well athletically, on the football front especially, on the gymnastics front especially, right? You got some good things happening in athletics right now at the University of Utah. Yet and still, there are concerns because you're in the Big 12 and not the Big 10, because your television distribution deal is not something that is keeping you at the forefront of college athletics from a financial standpoint. All these things. We've been talking about it too much, right? And when I hear, we're going to burn $13.5 million to just send you off to the retirement home with a little dignity, I don't even like that, all right? And, of course, that's not how it actually played out. That $13.5 million we learned from these emails that were released is going to Kyle Whittingham to coach Michigan. We have a couple of Bobby Bonilla days coming our way next year and the year after that for Kyle Whittingham, where he gets more money from the University of Utah football team while he's the head coach of Michigan, because nobody had the presence of mind, the forethought, the whatever, to think, if we're going to do this, if we're going to do this separation agreement, there's going to be some qualifiers in there where our buyout effectively gets canceled out if you take another job. And there's a lot of those in college sports, a lot of them.
Well, hold on. They had, if you take another job in Utah, OC, they had that in there, but it needed to be far-reaching.
And there was a decision
more than just in the state of Utah.
And the email that from Mark Harlan to, I believe, the manager of Kyle Whittingham was like, look, we're disappointed in the way this thing went, and we don't think we actually should pay you this separation agreement, but we also don't think that fighting this out is going to be in the best interest of the University of Utah football program. So here's your $8 million check, the first installment. Makes me sick to my stomach thinking about the university having to write that check.
Well, and he also said Mark Harlan also put in there, we didn't want to damage your legacy. The translation of that, guys, is they knew they didn't have a case. That's what that was.
What that was just Kyle Whittingham and his representation having a laugh. Unfortunately, at the expense of the university where he spent 21 years as the head coach. And some bridges have obviously been burnt, and that sucks. And I hate it, and I never wanted to have this conversation again. I wouldn't be doing my job if I came back, especially after an absence, when this story broke on Friday, and I didn't say, well, hold on here. There's some stuff. There's some meat on the bone, some information that look, a lot of people knew this information. We didn't see the particulars, and it is a stark reminder of how the business of college football, the business of it, is an ugly one, is a nasty one. Even when it should be this copacetic, unified vision, kumbaya relationship between a guy that has put you on the map in a way that, let's be honest, a lot of people never thought Utah football would be on the map. And the leadership that is trying to figure out if his time to move on has already come or has passed or whatever. And the decisions made, we're going to live with them. We're going to ride with them. The reason I'm so bothered by it is because Morgan Scalley now has to take over for a program that at some point was going to be his. Unequivocally, undoubtedly, at some point was going to be his. But he has to do it in a messy situation instead of in a clean break. And there's a dozen different ways it could have been a clean break, and there's probably a dozen different ways it could have been muddy and ugly like this. And unfortunately, we got what seems like the muddiest and the ugliest of all of them. And I hate it because Morgan Scalley is the guy. He's the right guy. His first interview of spring ball reminded you, if you had forgotten about the press conference, which you can obviously find on our ESPN 700 app, ESPN700sports.com. You know, hey, how was your first practice? Boring. It's not real football yet. You know, he's candid. He's giving you real answers. He's charismatic. He's awesome. He's the reason why a bunch of great players are going to still come to the University of Utah, even as the rest of us fret about, well, I don't know, do we have enough money? I'm worried about this. What about that guy? Like, a bunch of players, great players, are still going to come to Utah. They're still going to get developed well at Utah. They're still going to play great football for the University of Utah. but it didn't have to be the way that it is. And I don't know where you, the football fan, the Utah football fan, stands. I don't know if you're like, well, I know a lot of you are like, Whit burned the bridges and he burned the boats, and I'm sick of him and I don't like him. Whatever. If that's the opinion you want to have, you're entitled to it. That's fine. I saw a lot of conversation when this was breaking. Hey, Whit's legacy is really in question here. Okay. He was shown the door. He was told you can come back, but you're not
really going to be in charge completely.
You're no longer in charge. We're going to allow you to maintain your title, but we're not going to allow you to maintain the functions associated with that title. And by the way, that transition, anyone you talk to in the program, it has already been happening in a maybe somewhat begrudging, but a much more natural way over the course of the last 2 or 3 seasons. How many times Devin Dampier would sit here and we would talk, and Morgan actually runs a lot more meetings than people thinks. There's a lot of things that were already happening, and I know there was tension last year, and there would have been further tension this offseason if Morgan Scalley had to sit there when Mark Harlan called him and said, hey, man, Kyle Whittingham wants 2 more years at 9 and at 9.6, and we're going to give it to him because he's the winningest coach in the history of this program. He is the face of this program. He's the reason we're all in this position, and we hope you're okay with that. And Morgan might have had to make a decision. But guess what? It was going to be his team at some point anyway. If he had gone to be, I don't know, Colorado State head coach, UNLV head coach, whatever, it was going to be his at some point anyway, right? It doesn't – I prefer the storyline of he played at Utah, he coached at Utah, and only at Utah. I love –
One logo.
I'm a Utah man. Always have been, always will be. Love it. I can't love it more. But it's as messy as it can possibly be when we're in March and the team is up there practicing and we're reading emails between the athletic director and the former head coach's agent detailing for us the insistence under whatever influence that your time here is done, Kyle Whittingham. And then he gets to laugh his way to the bank with $13.5 million of Utah's dollars, while also making about $10 million a year from Michigan, and while taking the entire offensive staff and arguably your best defensive recruiter and 4 or 5 of the best players that you had on the roster, at least the most proven best players you had on the roster. It's a bad look for Utah football, not for Morgan, not for the players on the roster.
Not for the current coaching staff, nothing like that.
But it's a bad look for the way this was handled at the end. And it forces the fan base, which is, they've kind of already done it, but it forces the fan base to form an opinion and to take a side. And I don't like that. I hate that, in fact. And most people have decided and they've taken the side that, like, look, we don't like Kyle Whittingham. He fleeced us, and now we know he fleeced us even more. Financially, he did, and he did it with the talent, the coaching talent, and the player talent. Guys, he would not have done it if you had said yes to 9 and 9.6, if you had said yes to 2 more years. And maybe the question is as simple as that. 877-353-0700. If you can, scrub all of the yuck and all the mud and all the muck out of your mind and out of your opinion and just decide for me, go back to like right before the bowl game, okay? You're going into bowl prep week. Michigan has not yet offered Kyle Whittingham a job.
Pre-Christmas. Because it was day after Christmas he gets hired, OC.
Yeah.
It was
okay.
A crazy reminder that it was right there.
Go back to a more innocent time in your Utah football fan life when you're waiting for Santa Claus to bring you your great gifts and you find out hey, Kyle Whittingham, we thought he was going to be done. He actually doesn't want to be done. Should we pay him $9 million to come back? Just yes or no. 877-353-0700. Did you want him back at $9 million for another year? We'll leave the second year out of it because you can't even think about those things.
Witt's been on a year-to-year basis for what, 4 years now?
Which was he told us he shouldn't have done it that way. He should not have answered those questions the way that he answered them. And by the way, if Kyle Whittingham asked for another year, I know he asked for 2. Let's say he asked for another year and it's for $9 million, and Utah says, "Ugh, how about for 8?" But without this thing in here where Morgan gets decision-making power.
Where he has no control, basically. He just gets the title.
He's your defensive coordinator, and he's still your heir apparent, but your relationship with him is for you to manage that tension because he's sick of waiting, right?
Yeah.
But we're not going to give Morgan any extra power, any extra title. We will give you not exactly what you asked for. That's just a negotiation. That's just a contract negotiation, right? Like Michigan probably doesn't come swooping in. If the report is Kyle Whittingham is expected to return to Utah for the 2026 season for X number of dollars. Terms of contract to be disclosed at a later date. Whatever, right? Michigan is probably just like, all right, we'll figure something else out. I think the Michigan thing happened because they were like, wait a second, this guy's on the market? He wouldn't be on the market if the response to the email is not, we'll give you less than you asked for, but we're also going to take power away from you. Knowing what I think I know about Kyle Whittingham, the money has a lot less to do with this than that clause.
Yeah, absolutely. That was my read too, OC. And my big takeaway from this is I don't have any problem with, in general, Utah saying, Whit, we're kind of tired of you changing your mind. So we're going to take a hard line here and tell you, hey, we've moved on to Morgan. I don't mind that. That makes it messy, but I don't mind it. For like University of Utah, Mark Harlan, the athletic department, they had every reason to feel that way. The donors too. I also don't mind Whit going, are you kidding me? I'm Kyle Whittingham. Do you know what this program was before me? The Urban Meyer, the 2 years with Urban Meyer notwithstanding, like, come on. I'm Utah football. Why are you trying to push me out the door? I don't mind that at all either. What I don't think was handled very well is one, the new contract that got drawn up. I mean, Utah could have put more safeguards in there so that they didn't have to owe him $13.5 million on his way out and have a little bit of egg on your face, right? It's that kind of stuff that kind of that sits wrong with me. But everything else, I mean, we talked about this when we were speculating, and when you in particular were hearing some of these things happening at the time, OC. We talked about how this is kind of proof that there's no real easy, mutual good feeling parting of ways between someone that has been your everything for a couple of decades and the next person. Like it's always going to be more messy than you would like it to be.
Sure.
I don't mind that there was some mess. I just think Utah could have protected themselves better.
A divorce probably was inevitable here, and instead of the kind of like mutual friendly parting of ways, maybe it was inevitable.
Who knows what the whole truth is? You would know better than I do, but the Ron McBride era, it seemed like that was the most idyllic. Like, I'm done. He's still obviously been a big presence at the university and throughout the state since then. didn't seem to be any
No, there
rough
was.
break. But there was.
There
okay.
was.
I mean, I was going to say.
Like you were young at that time. Like, I mean, there were players crying when Ron McBride got fired, right?
Oh, I didn't realize he was fired.
Yeah,
there was a fire. Okay,
so
well then there certainly was a little bit of a mess there.
It all comes out in the wash because then you move on to Urban Meyer and you have two of the greatest years in program history, and you're like,
and Coach Mack has handled it with all kinds of class,
and so is the university.
Yeah,
and there's a meeting of minds, right, where it's just like he went and he coached at Weber State. He did great things for that university. He's done incredible things for high schools and high school recruiting and the development of the high school game and coaching at the high school level in the state. So, yeah, it was handled as well as it could be handled. There was some ugliness at the end of the Ron McBride era at the University of Utah. I think – is Chris Hill coming on with Spence today?
Dr. Chris Hill on the show today.
Maybe Spence will ask him about that. Because maybe he feels there's a reason to talk about that. But, I mean, that has been smoothed over. Time heals all wounds, right? This is fresh. This hurts. And – when divorces happen, because that's the best way to characterize this, I think, both sides usually lawyer up. And even when it's as mutually respectful as it could possibly be, and I don't think either side really bears any ill will towards the other with the Kyle Whittingham. I don't think he hates the University of Utah for doing it this way. I don't think he hates Mark Harlan. I don't think he hates the athletic department. I don't think he hates President Randall. I think he's just like, all right, fine. It was probably upsetting. Probably difficult for him. He's at Michigan now, all right? It worked out quite nicely. And he's laughing because he gets $13.5 million from Utah as well. That's where, like, the lawyer for if Kyle Whittingham's dad in this divorce and the Utah football program is mom in this divorce, mom's lawyer needs to lose a license here. Like, what? How did you let that happen? That's like, we were talking, I hated the analogy at first because I distinctly remember crosstalk, sitting across from Spence, knowing that coaches were going to leave, knowing that players were going to leave. He got the house, he got the car, he got the kids. I was like, it's crass, it's callous. It makes light of something that actually happens and tears people's real lives apart. But it's apt, right? It's an adept analogy here, and he absolutely did. He got the vacation home, he got the frequent flyer miles, and he got all the money in the bank accounts.
You got all the friends too. The coaches could be all the friends.
So we got great text coming in from Derek, 1624. I'm 1,000,000% with the athletic department on this. They were tired of being led on forever. They were tired of his antics. I'm happy they made the decision they did. Fine. Yes. There's a huge contingent in the fan base that feels exactly that way. And the big reason why you can feel that way is because Morgan Scalley is the right dude and you feel good about the future, right? You love it. But even if you're just like, yeah, get rid of him. I'm done with him. I wasn't in that place. But even if you are, Kyle Whittingham, don't want him anymore. Force him into retirement. Send the email that says, no, we don't want you, instead of the one that says, yes, we want you, but you won't have any power, whatever. Just say, hey, coach, we're done here. That's fine. Again, if that's the decision being made by leadership, great. While you're doing that, cover your you-know-what. Have the foresight, have the thought to know the landscape of college football is unpredictable. And by the way, you're dealing with a man who has been unpredictable in the last week of these emails, right? Well, we thought he was done. He was acting like he was done. Every single sign pointed to Kyle Whittingham being done. And then he was like, wild card, nope, I'm not. Give me $9 million. Fine. If you want to say, no, I don't want that. No, it's time for us to move on, coach. Great. Fine. Make sure that your divorce lawyer knows what they're doing. The biggest problem I have is that you're paying this man to coach at Michigan. And we're going to have a couple more headlines on this when the season starts. And then we're going to have another headline in February of 2027 and another one in 2028. Oh, the University of Utah is sending Kyle Whittingham another check today. That is damaging to the reputation of your athletic department, your university, and your school. That should not be allowed to happen. And if you wanted to fight it out in court, I'd have supported that. Maybe you would have lost. Probably would have lost. That's probably why. They probably were under legal advisement. Like, just pay him because we didn't put the language in to protect ourselves. So just pay him. Take the high road here. I would rather fight it out. I would rather you say, no, man. You said you wanted this program to be left in a good place. You wanted this program to be better off than when you left it. You want all this. And again, this is the same guy. I was the one who told you. Of course he did all of that. Took coaches and players with him because that's what you do. You maximize your setup for the next job. But this tells me there was nothing in there, in that separation agreement, that had any kind of thought at all that Kyle Whittingham would be taking another college coaching job, even though he told you, I want to keep coaching college football.
Well, and even though you knew for 2 weeks that maybe the biggest job opening that there ever would be in college football is open. Like, that's the other just bad foresight here. You knew Michigan was open. And yes, there were all of us going, I doubt Michigan calls him, and they probably want a younger guy who coached at a bigger program than Utah. Even though we were all saying that, we all were also saying if they call him, he's taking that job.
Yes. People blew up at me. So I was like, if I'm Michigan, I'm calling Kyle Whittingham right now. He was the exact antidote to the scandal that they just had.
They landed on the right person, even though he was the sixth guy on their list
and
or
guess
whatever.
What? So did Utah. Utah also landed on the right guy. That's what I hate. Okay, I hate because I'm cheap and money-centric in a world of college football that is money-centric right now. I hate paying money. This is dead money. This is salary cap dead money, $13 million plus. In an athletic department that people are just like, you don't realize the debt here, okay? Hate it. Hate that number. Right next to that, on things that bother me, is the fact that Morgan Scalley, instead of running and focusing and doing the thing where it's like, hey, your first spring camp, let's get these guys developed. Who's showing out right now? Who is stepping into these leadership positions on the team? He now has to answer questions about this, or he has to say no comment on questions about this. And it's not the start that he deserves.
Did you see Spence's reality check pod on KUTV and
great
ESPN
job by
700?
Spence, great job by Morgan.
Spence had to ask him.
Yeah. And
Morgan did a great job of just saying how much Kyle Whittingham means to him. But I was going, man, this sucks that Morgan has to try to figure out a way to answer this question because it has nothing to do with Morgan.
Well, and the other thing that sucks about it is now you have to say, if you're really reading between the lines in these emails, all right, so you were willing to bring Coach Whittingham back, but you needed the power to belong to Morgan. Was that a Morgan? Did Morgan tell you that? Did Morgan's agent say, well, if you're going to let Kyle Whittingham come back, Morgan gets to make decisions?
And who knows on that from the things that you in particular have heard and others who are actually sourced, unlike myself, have heard, more than likely there were some donors who said, you got to put this in. At the very least, there were some donors more than likely that said, you got to put this in here if Witt's going to be our coach one more year. Who knows if Morgan or any of his reps did that? It doesn't seem like a move that Morgan would do, but who knows?
So Furlong and Bartle and everyone else who did the hard work and made sure that we got the public information request.
Shout out to Jason Batacchio at the Tribune.
Batacchio, the beat writers, good job to all of you, okay, for doing the Big J journalism work. Also, I'm mad at you because I wanted to be done with this, and I did. This is information that I am grossed out to see, right?
It doesn't sit right with you. Yeah. And especially here on the home of the Utes where, listen, we don't want to have to talk about things that are could absolutely skew negative towards the University of Utah.
Well,
and that this is unfortunately one of those things.
It's a negative outcome for the University of Utah. It's a positive outcome because Morgan Scalley is your coach. That is the silver lining here. That's a wonderful thing. Pretty much everything else that came out of this is negative. You lost money. You lost coaches. You lost players. You're losing respect in the college football world from the people that have seen you, and a lot of them do, have seen you as like this throwback gold standard of a program that does things the right way and a department that is above some of this mess that everyone else has to deal with. That facade, even if hopefully it wasn't just a facade, but that veneer is gone. So Morgan Scalley, again, unfairly now has to be the redeeming quality in all of this in his first year as a head coach.
Real quick, because we got a break.
We do.
I'll say this because I've been able to be at some spring football stuff. You, of course, because you've been out of the country, have not. You would not be able to tell that this went on if you spend any time up at the facility right now. That's how great a job Morgan is doing, and not only with the players implementing his RSNB culture, right, and his just optimistic personality. But also, it's not just with the players. It's like we were able to, he opened up practice for us on Saturday, OC, which was very refreshing. It was thank you, Morgan, for letting us watch 2 hours of practice. You just felt like good things are happening here. Just being in that area when he invited us up to lunch and what he called a chalk talk presentation on Tuesday last week. Same kind of thing. All the coaches, even some coming back. I talked to Chad Bumpus a lot at this lunch. All of them are so excited to be at the University of Utah and to be working for Morgan Scalley. And that, despite this ugliness that happened at the end of the Kyle Whittingham era, that should make you feel really, really good if you're a Utah football fan. Does that mean they win 10 games this year? That remains to be seen. What it does mean is that what we've been saying, the program is in good hands for a long time going forward, no matter what, is definitely feels like it's being true now that we're actually seeing them do some team functions.
Show today and every day is brought to you by our friends at Big Willie's, 1717 South Main, the #1 bar food menu in the state of Utah, best pool hall, the cheapest, best, most diverse drink specials that you're going to find at any place of adult drinking establishment. Check them out. 1717 South Main, Big Willie's, presenting sponsor of the Sean O'Connell Show. Love them and everything they do for us. Ari Temkin is going to have some thoughts on the way March Madness has gone for the Big 12. And, of course, I'll ask him about his thoughts on this situation that we're getting a little bit more light on regarding the Kyle Whittingham exit at Utah. It's the Sean O'Connell Show, getting rolling on a Monday. ESPN 700 and 92.1 FM. Sean O'Connell Show here on ESPN 792.1 FM. Efforting a conversation with our friend Ari Temkin, Big 12 insider, TuneIn Radio, Big 12 Today. The conference, we talked about, how the Big 12 conference in basketball is either the best or in the conversation for the best basketball conference in all the land. And the Big Ten has, in this particular NCAA tournament, they have staked their claim pretty emphatically as well. Arizona moved on against the Aggies. Well-fought Aggies. Good job to Utah State. Jared Calhoun, stay, please. I know it's unlikely, but Utah State, in a valiant effort, still ends up losing by 12 to the number 1 seed Arizona, which, if you're looking at this from a Big 12 lens, you're happy to see Arizona still involved. You're happy to see Iowa State and Houston still involved. And the Big Ten, who has, stood atop the college football world in recent years, is now probably going to get even more cocky, even more arrogant, even more, dare I say, obnoxious, because they're looking really, really good in this NCAA tournament as well. If there's a single Cinderella to be talked about, I don't think we can talk about Iowa being a 9-seed Cinderella. But if there's anything that you're still clinging to as a fan who only likes March Madness because of Cinderella stories, the Big Ten has given you some of that also, I guess. Texas, sorry, you don't ever get to be a Cinderella in anything. Anyway, Ari Temkin joins us now here on the Sean O'Connell Show. Ari, welcome. How are you, sir?
What's up, brother? How are you?
Good, man. Appreciate you jumping back on. I've been gone for a couple of weeks, and hell of a time to be gone, I'll tell you, now that we're starting this March Madness situation and seeing where the Big 12 conference is at. Have there been any results or any, absences in this second round or in this third round, this Sweet 16, that are surprising to you from a Big 12 perspective?
No, actually. I think if you would have told me a month ago this is where we'd be in the Sweet 16, I probably would have been surprised. But I think given where the season ended, the Big 12 tournament, these were the 3 best teams in the league. And I don't know that there's much of an argument to be made for it. So, it would have been nice for maybe a surprise team, like an Iowa or a Texas in the SEC and the Big Ten respectively to make it through. And, I think with the injuries to Texas Tech, that was obviously too much to overcome. And, Kansas had their own internal strife, the injuries with BYU. No, I'm not surprised at all that this is where we are with these 3 teams.
I'm glad you brought up BYU because, we speculated that this was a possibility weeks and weeks ago, that they had some significant injuries that were really starting to slow things down. And this was a big money roster that looked like, even before we got to Big 12 conference play, tournament play, they probably weren't going to fulfill the promise that we were all buying in on, at least locally buying in on when the year started. And they're not the only team in the country, the only program in the country that has to process that, but they're the one that people here care most about, either because they hate watch them or because they love watch them in Salt Lake City. So is there going to be any big picture evaluation, any change, any alteration of recruiting behavior and NIL behavior because of how it did not work out for BYU this year? For injuries are always a valid reason to underperform, but it doesn't make you feel much better in the moment.
Right. And look, I think the reality, OC, is, injuries and the Saunders injury in particular is a huge issue for this team. But I think there are some definite big picture takeaways for BYU from a program standpoint that are probably as important, if not more important, than the Saunders injury. The Saunders injury, completely derailed any possibility of a surprise run for this team based on, what their matchups could have been. But it also would have glossed over what I think are pretty impactful parts about how they're built. And, you could start 1 with depth and 2 with defense. Even before the Saunders injury, this was not a team that had any depth. They were in the 350s in bench scoring and bench minutes. That obviously didn't change with the Saunders injury, and you thought maybe, this would empower some people and would help to, put them in a better position, a better light. But that obviously didn't happen. So I think as Kevin Young, encounters this offseason, one of the most important things he can do is, one, try to build a roster with greater depth, because you look at Arizona, you look at Houston. I mean, those are two teams. It's not just that they're really good at the top; they're really good, 1 through 12 in their roster, and they're getting guys who maybe didn't contribute as much throughout the season that have become impactful players once we get into postseason play. The other thing is defense, and this isn't anything new. Last year they didn't have a very good defense. I would say beyond the obvious with Saunders, their defense took a nosedive without Saunders. And, I mean, he was at a point where he was averaging over 2 steals per game. So, they didn't have a good defense even with Saunders playing. But once he left, their defense just took a nosedive. And I think, you look at them compared to Houston. I know I brought this up, but, they're just not a physical team. They're not built like that. They're more finesse. I would hope that from an identity standpoint, they build this offseason knowing that they've got to be, one, more physical, and two, they've got to be better on defense. You just cannot be that good on offense and completely neglect the defensive end. Look, I mean, even Purdue and Illinois are two teams that are very good offensively, but they're still top 50 in defense. You don't have to be great defensively. You just can't be in the 100s or the 200s.
If you had to put your eggs in the basket of one of the remaining Big 12 teams, who would you choose as we head to the Sweet 16?
Yeah, Arizona. Look, I thought Arizona would play Duke in the national championship. In fact, my Final Four was Arizona, Duke, Michigan, and Illinois. The funny thing about that is, now I would take Houston over Illinois and amend my Final Four to be, Duke, Houston, Arizona, and Michigan. But look, I think Arizona, they're so good. Even they haven't played that good this postseason so far, and yet despite that, they've still had 2 pretty lopsided victories. They just have so much depth, and they can beat you in so many different ways. We still haven't even seen Anthony Del Orso go off in the tournament. This is a guy that can get you 20 or 22, and we've seen that over the course of the regular season. So I just think inside, outside, point guard play, experience, defense, depth. Arizona checks a lot of the boxes. I think Arizona wins the national championship.
The hand-wringing that started a few years ago continues and is maybe extra loud this year about the fact that, the NIL and the transfer portal situation has, in some people's mind, effectively killed Cinderella, because it's harder now to maintain, your roster, your development of players that get overlooked by those power teams. They get now to transfer to power teams. They get paid more by power teams. Is it enough of a problem that the NCAA will try to find a solution? We'll try to find a way to address it.
It's an interesting question, OC. I mean, I would say the short answer, no, I don't. And I think, as you were talking about this when I was coming on, there's a few ways to look at this. So, I mean, I would start, number one, with, what are the implications of it? So for me, one of the biggest implications of this, which maybe is not being as heralded as a story, is the idea of, you're really killing the feeder system for coaches. Coaches long would have deep runs into the postseason from the mid-major level, and then that would allow them to graduate and get hot, bigger jobs at the Power Four. So, for one, we've seen coaches do it. We haven't seen players do it as much. Now players are doing it, and people don't like it, but coaches have done it for a long time. But the other part to that, too, is, what does this mean for the mid-major losing coaches? And then, two, where are all the good coaches coming from? So I still think, we'll still get mid-major coaches that will move up, but I think it's harder to do, especially given, they're not going to have the same successes that they used to have in terms of getting to the Sweet 16. But this is also not exactly new. It was newer last year than it is this year. I think I've mentioned this before, but, OC, heading into the postseason, there were 3 teams that were plus 35 in the Ken Palm net efficiency rate. What does that mean? Well, they are plus 35 in terms of what they score out of 100 possessions and what they give up out of 100 possessions. Basically, the difference between points per game and points given up per game, for all intents and purposes. Okay, so plus 35. So before last year, OC, there had only been 5 teams that had done that between 1998, when Ken Palm started that stat, and 2024. 5 total teams. All 5 of those teams made the Final Four. Last year, all 4 1 seeds were plus 35 heading into the tournament. So now it's 9 for 9. And this year, the top 3 1 seeds who are still in it were all plus 35. So teams plus 35 in the net rating before the tournament starts are looking to go a perfect a 12 for 12 of making the Final Four, being plus 35 before the tournament starts. And again, that number was 5 for 5 before last year's tournament. So it would be 7 for 7 the last 2 years, which goes to show you that really in the last 2 years, parity has been killed, that the top of the sport is way better than it's been. And maybe the biggest surprise about that is how much NIL and the transfer portal have made parity more prevalent in football, but less prevalent in basketball.
All right, Temkin, our guest here on the Sean O'Connell Show, Big 12 Insiders, TuneIn Radio's Big 12 Today. We're looking at some uncertainty around Bill Self at Kansas. North Carolina might be debating some things. I haven't seen the latest if there's been an update on that. Are we going to have a couple blue blood jobs open potentially?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I'm not certain about Kansas, but it certainly feels like that's going to be the case for Hubert Davis in North Carolina, as they've really underperformed basically every year since he took over, not including the year they lost to Kansas in the national championship in 2022 when Davis was in year 1 and had basically Roy Williams as players. I think with Self, basically since winning that championship, Kansas has been 1 or 2 and done in the tournament, without making it to the second weekend. And you might look at that and think, what a spoiled fan base, and I get it as a fan of that team and an alumnus. But when you look at their rosters, the money they spend, the investment that they're able to make, and the talent that they have and their output, especially on offense, they've been hugely disappointing, especially this season. You could have chalked up the last couple of years to a stale program with lots of players that have been around for a long time, but OC, they basically have been 50th or worse in Ken Palm offense every year since winning the title in 2022. They've been in the hundreds in three-point shooting really every year since 2018. So they're not really a modern type team in terms of offense and three-point shooting. Self has also missed time every year since winning the national title in 22. He had the heart attack in 23. He's missed games in 24, and then he missed games again this season due to the same thing. So I'm assuming he's going to evaluate his health. Notice that he's missing time, that he's, spending time away from his family, and that his heart is not getting any better. And obviously, if you're a coach at this level, that's not really conducive to your heart and heart health. So, we'll see. I mean, he's a legend. He won 17 Big 12 titles. He went to 4 Final Fours, won 2 national championships. He's one of the greatest coaches in the history of the sport, and certainly one of the great coaches in the history of the storied program at KU. But I also think that if he evaluates the whole picture of this thing and knows how much time he's taken off, how this is not a great, profession for your heart, then I think he will also step aside.
So even in the throes of March Madness, I started the show today talking about Utah football because they're in spring ball, of course, but also some public information requests came through Friday. Some stories broke. We got to see emails back and forth between Kyle Whittingham's representation and the athletic department at the University of Utah. Learned some more details on a big fat payout that he's getting even as he coaches at Michigan. And to me, it makes what was already kind of an awkward and maybe ugly situation definitively uglier. Your thoughts on the new information regarding Kyle Whittingham's exit?
Yeah, I mean, I could not have put it any better. It's really interesting because you've got the hard feelings internally, right? Like the feelings between Utah, the feelings between Whittingham. But how is a fan supposed to feel? That's the part that I think is probably lost in all this from the administration side, from the Kyle Whittingham side is, here's a guy that was an absolute legend at the university. I mean, he when you think about the Whittingham name and how long it's been associated with the program and how much defensively that, the Whittinghams have been involved. And, I can't imagine the confusion that Utah fans have right now in terms of, what side to take, who's good, who's bad. Like, we live in a world where it's really easy to pick out who the good guys and the bad guys are from the movies we watch and the shows we watch. And yet real life is a lot more difficult than that. And it's not as cut and dry. And in some ways, Utah is the bad guy. In some ways, Utah's the good guy. And, I think you could say the same thing about Whittingham. In some ways, Whittingham is innocent and a victim of all this. And I think in some ways, Whittingham is guilty and not a victim of any of this. So, I think that's, again, sort of the way life is and not exactly how we see it in Disney movies. I think it's extremely disappointing the way that it was handled on both sides. I think, it's funny because we just talked about Bill Self. In a year when Roy Williams leaves and all Kansas fans are all upset about Roy Williams leaving, they forgot about that pretty quickly because of how good Bill Self was immediately. And I think the same is true for Utah. Like, so many of these hard feelings, so many of these, confused feelings can all just be rectified by a successful season and start to Morgan Scalley. I have no reason to think that it won't be successful. Yeah, I mean, I think you're right. Like, there's got to be a lot of confusion, especially from Utah fans, over how to feel about this, especially as more and more information comes to light. It maybe if Utah fans were leaning more on the side of Kyle Whittingham, this helped make Utah look a little bit more, a little bit better, and maybe the same is true for Whittingham. The reality is it looked like he wanted to continue coaching, and Utah was not going to provide an environment for him to do so. So, he did what he was able to do, which is, leverage that to get a great job at Michigan, and Utah's still paying for it. So, again, I see both sides to it. It sucks, but at the end of the day, this is sort of the nature of the beast in this sport.
Ari, it's always great hearing from you. Thanks for jumping back on, man. Talk soon.
Welcome back, brother. Take care.
Ari Temkin, Big 12 insider, Big 12 Today. He hosts that on TuneIn Radio. The Sean O'Connell Show continues with some hot lunch provided by Big Willie's next. It's ESPN 700 and 92.1 FM. I got an update on how things are going here in the studio. I just accidentally pulled one half of my headphones off. Sean O'Connell Show.
Great view for the YouTube channel, by the way.
Hot lunch. Brought to you by our friends at Big Willie's 1717 South Main. The best food menu you're going to find at any adult drinking establishment in the state of Utah. Today's hot lunch special, corned beef, grilled cheese. And yes, it's as delightful as it sounds. They've used white bread for this one. You know what? Might be a little bit of a sourdough. And ranch, fry sauce, sharp cheddar, delicious corned beef, and jalapeno cheese tater kegs. Now, you've heard of a tater tot, and you know how big a tater tot is, right? James, do you have one of your tater kegs? You got to hold it. I already ate mine, so you got to hold yours up for your camera view. The tater keg is like maybe 2.5 times as big as a regular tater tot. Get it?
It's really tall.
It's a big old fat tater tot with jalapeno and cheese in it.
It's real thick. I'm so excited for it. Thank you again for sharing some of the hot lunch. We gushed over another hot lunch client, which you should definitely check out, Burger Fusion, before your trip, OC. Big Willie's also never misses. So I'm really excited to dig into this.
And I've said it many times, but I appreciate the way that they bring in things that they know I wouldn't necessarily order. I'm staying in my lane with tater tots most of the time. I see something like a tater keg. I'm like, I don't know what that is. I don't need it. I do need it now. These things are awesome. Go down to Big Willie's. Tell them OC sent you. Get the lunch special. The hot lunch today is a corned beef grilled cheese sandwich with bacon, jalapeno, cheesy tater kegs. Think of a monster tater tot on the side.
If you're like, I didn't get enough corned beef on St. Patrick's Day, Big Willie's got you covered with this sandwich. Also, OC, it's appropriate that that you're sort of trying to sell people on things, because now your headset, your headphones make you look like a telemarketer. Just no like tiny microphone.
I could add that. This falls into, for the hot lunch, this falls into one of the things that I missed while I was gone category. Morgan Scally, again, I cannot emphasize enough how we know Morgan is the right dude. Morgan's that guy, right? He's putting his money literally where his mouth is, because there is a need for increased support on the NIL front. There's a need for increased support when it comes to making sure that you have the recruiting resources necessary. And Morgan Scally, who now is making, and look, he was making great money before as a defensive coordinator, but now he's making really good money as the head coach at the University of Utah. He's already peeling off $2 million of his own cash to give back to the program. And my reaction to these things always at the beginning is just like, wait, what? It's kind of weird. But the reasoning behind it, and you've heard Morgan articulate it, and you'll talk to people that are in the know and people that are kind of in that same category. When I say, like, lead by example, this is literally what he's trying to do. He's saying, look, I will invest my own money into this program, money that the program has given me. I'm refunding it because I want it to go to the players. I want to do you go back to pre-NIL, right? Before the changes came, and there were coaches in the SEC that were talking about doing this exact thing. I'll give some of my own money back if it allows us to pay these kids in a legal manner.
You remember Matt Campbell gave some of his money back in his recent contract extension with Iowa State before he took the Penn State job this offseason. And your reaction to that was, oh man, it makes the university look really poor.
Well,
I was curious what yours would be to Morgan Scally doing a similar thing.
And this is why it's important to hear the reasoning behind things before you open your big mouth. But like, it is leading by example. Morgan is saying he's not just going to be the guy that yells into a microphone like I do. Hey, boosters, you got to get behind this thing. We need more of your money. They don't want to hear that. They want to keep hearing that, right? They don't want to hear that at BYU. They don't want to hear that at Utah. They certainly don't want to hear it at places where, the funds are a little bit leaner, like a Weber State, like a Utah State. The big money folks in those worlds don't want to keep hearing. They don't want to get an email and a phone call and a text message and then have the head coach. They don't want to hear, we'll play some sound for you later. Mick Cronin talking about his team exiting and what's the solution. How can you make sure that UCLA basketball doesn't get knocked out before the second weekend? And his answer is, I could use $5 more million. They don't want to hear that. They're more willing to hear it if you're like, look, I'm going to show you how willing I am to support this program. Not just with my time, not just with the absurd work hours. I'm going to put my money back in, follow my lead. I know it's cliche. You might even think it's corny. But if I'm a person sitting on a mountain of cash, right? If I'm in that name on the building, big money kind of thing, kind of category, and a coach is just like, I need your money. Give me more money. My personality is like, why don't you give your money? And if he's like, I did. Like, oh. Okay, well, there's one barrier to entry that I can.
Well, let me lift up this couch cushion here. You can have this much million if you want.
So, look, Morgan is invested. And we've seen this, by the way. There's history of this in Utah football. In the past, the coaches, remember Brian Johnson, he gave money for the facility. The rules were set up so that when you made donations to the program, it went to a building. It went to equipment. It went to plane tickets, whatever. Morgan is like, here's $2 million of money that I have earned that has been given to me by the university. I'm going to give it back to, not the university. I'm not refunding the university. I'm refunding the student athletes. I'm going to take my money and I'm going to say, no, give some of it to Bird Ficklin. Give some of it to Devin Dampier. Give some of it to Kelvin Obot. Give some of this to Creed Whittemore. That's what he's doing. And it's a strange system that you can do it in college football now, but it is a commitment to the program. It's a gesture of commitment to the program that leaves you above reproach when anyone is just like, stop asking me for more, dude. I need you to do more. Look, I'm doing everything. I put my money in. I'm asking you. You don't have to do the time thing. You don't have the expertise for that. You do have the money. Help me. Help me help you. Right?
So I take it this whole thing was just an elaborate indirect apology to Matt Campbell and Iowa State. Is that what,
no,
is that what
Matt.
this was?
You left for Penn State. I don't like you.
You're not like Morgan at all. Morgan stayed.
Yeah. Morgan's cool. You're not, Matt Campbell. How many players did he take with him to Penn State?
Was it 19 or
It's
something? It's
everyone.
Man, every starter.
Anyway. Same, but different. Different, same. All right, Sean Mooney is going to join us. We'll talk about a little postmortem on Utah's basketball season, a look at the tournament as it's played out to this point. I do have big questions about the way forward for BYU. We'll get Sean Mooney's thoughts on all these things. It's the Sean O'Connell Show on ESPN 700 and 92.1 FM. Welcome to hour number 2 on the Sean O'Connell Show. You might not want to. Maybe you already know how bad it looks. Maybe it's looking great for you right now, but you can track your bracket on ESPN 700 and 92.1 FM's $1 Million Bracket Challenge by going to ESPN700sports.com. See how you stack up against me, other ESPN 700 staff, and guests. $1 Million Bracket Challenge brought to you by Big Willie's, Game Day Men's Health, Intermountain Bobcat, Budweiser, International Sportsman's Expo, and the Utah RV Super Show. Sean Mooney joining us here. Before I get to Sean Mooney, though, James, we got to peel back the curtain a little bit. It's the whole reason why we welcome people into the show. My phone rang during the break. My phone rang during the break, and it said Broadway Media, which, of course, is the parent company we work for, right?
I don't know that we need to peel back the curtain.
No, we're doing it, James. It said Broadway Media on there, and I was just like there was a benefits election window that was open last week while I was gone, and I was getting a lot of emails about that. I'm just like, why would Broadway Media, someone from Broadway Media, be calling me,
HR?
knowing that I'm on my show right now? But I was like, we're in the break. Okay. So I answer. It was James. It was James Peterson.
I called the wrong shot.
On the other side of the glass.
I called the wrong shot. Probably every phone can do this now. I don't know differences between Apple and Android in this way, but like you can search just by name in your contacts, and like all the Seans are on one page, and I dialed the wrong number.
Awesome.
Wrong Sean.
He's like, hey, this is James from ESPN 700. I'm like, James, you called the wrong.
Well, and I'm looking down, and you're like probably staring right at me, like, hey, man.
Glass, like, hey, bud, everything going okay in there? We're lucky enough, though, to have the actual guest we were targeting, Sean Mooney. So now you've got two walk-Seans, which, of course, is what happens when Sean O'Connell and Sean Mooney are on radio together. Hey, Sean.
Hi, Sean. How are you? Hey, in James' defense, I can understand why he would do that, right? So, number one, my fellow walk-Sean, you're smarter and better looking. And maybe his phone just accidentally directed itself to you because it wanted someone on your show that wasn't, so tall and kind of homely.
I don't think that those comparisons are part of James's phone, and I don't think those are accurate assessments of our differences and similarities, Sean. But I appreciate you trying to be humble about it.
Hey, AI can do incredible things, guys.
All right. Let's talk a little hoops, Sean Mooney. Since the last time we spoke, obviously Big 12 tournament and Utah's run in this first season under Alex Jensen.
Losses for any team at any level, regardless of how good the level, is not something that probably many coaches would be excited about. I know he's not. I know that they're working diligently to try and find a formula that works. I think now they understand. I don't think that our formula was that far off. I think we were competitive in a lot of games. And the unfortunate thing is being competitive in the Big 12 makes you a pretty darn good team, even if you have those losses. But it doesn't get you to the NCAA tournament. You got to be good and even better than good to win at a level where you can make the tournament in the Big 12.
So, obviously, we hope for better things onward and upward for Utah basketball. And the expectations were relatively low for this first season. We wanted to see growth. We wanted to see some installation of a new culture and things like that. And we'll let other people have the debate about whether that was a success or not. But you turn the focus to teams like Kansas, like BYU. Texas Tech was plagued by some injuries. These are all teams with the talent and with the resources and in some cases with the coaching and the history to where, not making it to the Sweet 16 is a big time disappointment. And when you look at, we'll start with BYU for obvious reasons. Yeah. When you look at the way their season worked out and all of the context behind it, if you're talking to your BYU friends, if you're talking to, the guys you used to play against, what is the reaction and what is the appropriate reaction right now to BYU's early exit, given everything that was, going for them and then the things that worked against them as the season progressed?
Sean, I just had the luxury of spending time with Jeff Judkins, whom you know. He was my coach when I when I was at University of Utah, and then he coached at Utah, obviously, and then at BYU for a long time. And I think this is right. He just said this today, and we were talking about BYU specifically. So shout out to Juddy. His women's teams were 20. I think this is right. They were always in the top 20 in defensive field goal percentage. So one thing you knew that you could hang your hat on was defense. And I think ultimately that's what you got to talk about when you talk about BYU this year. Obviously, Dawson Baker going down was big. Richie Saunders, more of a glue person than we even knew. They really didn't have a backup point guard, in my opinion. Dallin Hall would have been that person if he had been there. But they weren't very good defensively. And even, with arguably maybe the best player in the country, AJ Devonta, you got to be better defensively. And it wasn't that he was a bad one-on-one defender. He was good. Just as a team, I think that's really when you end up talking about this season, that was the difference, regardless of the injuries. The injuries number one, but the defense was number 2A or 1A, 1B.
Do you think, not just BYU, and we've had some version of this conversation before, but do you think that there's an alteration of philosophy, planning, whatever, when you kind of throw all your chips to the center of the table, at least in one way, and it doesn't work out? Do you have to then reevaluate your strategy on roster construction, on recruitment, if you're BYU specifically? Because the conversations I've had down there, there's not going to be a lack of resources. Like, people are not going to say, oh, it didn't work out with AJ. Well, never mind. We're not doing this again. But I don't think you can keep doing the same thing over and over and expect a different result. That's the old insanity analogy.
Yeah. And I mean, I think that, like, to me, I think they have a kid named Brant coming in who's maybe 6 in the country. So they've got another kid who could be a high level, possibly even an NBA player. But I think absolutely, Sean, every single year, if you're a coach, you're reevaluating, even the good years. I mean, so I think you should always be reevaluating. And I personally think the most successful coaches are the most humble. They don't think they know everything, and they don't think that what they're doing is necessarily the only way to do it. So, yeah, I think you definitely reevaluate. And you look at, and a lot of people talk about roster construction, and obviously Kevin Young knows exactly what he needs to do. He's been in the Big 12 now 2 years in a row, and they've kind of had a little different look each year. And for the fans that don't like what happened this year, my goodness, I want to remind them that they had a heck of a generational player that they got to watch. And now I understand that they want to see a team do better. And I don't want to steer the show, but at some point, Sean, we got to talk about Utah State too, because they're special. And I know you believe that. Maybe, that's a team we should talk about here in Utah, who arguably over the last 20 years, 25 years has been the best team in the state. I think 15 of their 26 NCAA appearances have occurred since 2000.
I'm still trying to figure out how they do it. And I've asked coaches up there. I've asked athletic directors up there. I've asked players, like, when there is constant turnover and you are now with the model of college basketball, what it is, you're a transitional stop for a lot of people, players and coaches. How are they so good continuously? And you get a lot of shrugs and half smiles and chuckles and, hey, we love basketball up here. Obviously the environment is fantastic, but that can't explain all of it. So you're much more dialed in and you're much more of a basketball expert than I'll ever be. Like, can you explain how Utah State has been able to be consistent with its results despite a lot of inconsistency with who is giving us those results?
Okay, so I think this is my opinion. Obviously, first of all, I got to give a shout out to my dad, Sean Jack Suitcase Mooney. He played football there, and so I'm an Aggie at heart. He's listening right now. But Utah State, I think what they've done is they haven't won the press conference once with their coach. I think they've really gone after a coach that they think can coach basketball, and I think the people in charge up there know what that means. And I think it starts on the defensive end, like Calhoun. You just watched this Utah State team. They went toe to toe with Arizona. I mean, defensively, they're good. And I think most of the teams they've had over the last 20, 25 years have started with that. But I would say that their administration and the people that know, the donors that know, and there's one in particular I've had a chance to talk to, they understand basketball and they look at a coach's resume and they understand who they're hiring because they're obviously hiring really good coaches. I mean, look what Ryan Odom did at Virginia, and that list goes on.
Are they going to have to build a fence around Jared Calhoun? I mean, there's a bunch of teams that are in flux now, right? And
Yeah.
you're getting reports that Cincinnati is after Coach Calhoun right now. I mean, can you keep a guy like him for even another year?
Man, I think Cincinnati's already filled their coaching position, but there are others in the Big 12 that have not. We know Arizona State. And, I mean, everything I've heard, I don't know Coach Calhoun at all. I do know one of his coaches, Kern Walsh, who was our DBO at Utah under Craig Smith, and I really like Kern. And I know a little bit about Utah State because I've got some connection to what we call the Utah State Mafia in my own business. But yeah, I mean, if he decides, Coach Calhoun decides that his quality of life is in a place where he likes it, obviously the Spectrum is as special a place to play in the country as there is. Those fans are as good as they get. The students come to all the games. Look at what they took on the road. I mean, they were as loud as Arizona, and that's saying something. You got to build a fence, Sean, and I to electrify it. I don't know what it looks like, but yeah, he's a hot commodity. I hope he stays. I mean, I want us to play Utah State every year. I understand that may not be a win-win proposition for University of Utah, but I love the good old days when we played Weber State and Utah State in Southern Utah, and we should be playing. I think that's Todd Phillips. That's right. UVU. Oh yeah. They should have been in the tournament if it hadn't been for Dominique Daniels and Cal Baptist with an unbelievable effort.
Sean Mooney is our guest for a few more minutes here on the Sean O'Connell Show, talking all things college hoop. And look, we're in March Madness, right? And there's people trying to say Cinderella's dead. There's people talking about what it means that, you know, the NIL and transfer portal has affected not only the landscape of college basketball, but specifically this kind of like protracted national holiday where we all dial in on college hoops together. And I wanted your thoughts on that because, like, look, there's not a true Cinderella in this year's Sweet 16, and it's easy to overreact in a moment, but it does appear to be trending in a direction that's going to make those true Cinderellas fewer and further between.
Yeah, no. I mean, when we look at number 11, Texas, and we call them a Cinderella, obviously they had a bad end to their SEC, but they're still Texas. And then when we look at Iowa, number 9, Iowa, you know, they're maybe the closest thing to a Cinderella, and they're playing arguably another Cinderella, Nebraska, who hasn't gotten out of the first round. But traditionally, none of those teams will be called a Cinderella. Iowa, they've got a great story. McCollum is a coach who was coaching at the D2 level, then took over for DeVries at Drake, and then he's got 3 or 4 players who are playing at the D2 level playing on his team and maybe one of the best point guards. But yeah, Sean, I mean, I don't think you can argue the last couple of years it looks more chalky, meaning that the teams that are supposed to win are winning. So it's tough, man. I mean, Texas and Iowa are Cinderellas right now in the Sweet 16.
I want to ask you something very specific to the St. John's game yesterday.
Yeah.
You put in, you know, whatever, 15, 18, 10, 20 minutes in a game, and you don't get a hoop at all. You don't get a bucket that entire time. And then when it's all on the line and the ball's in your – can you articulate for me as a player how difficult it is to make that play, to make the only 2 points of your stat sheet in that game be the most important points of the entire game? That's what we saw in the St. John's game.
Okay, so the listeners that don't know, Dylan Darling is the point guard that Sean O'Connell is referring to, and he was strapping him up at Idaho State in Pocatello. It's a couple hours north of Salt Lake City for you Salt Lake City listeners. And, he hit the biggest shot of his career. And, Sean, here's maybe what it was, the element of surprise. I'm sure Kansas was defending every other action. And how about Dylan Darling getting his body into a much longer defender and finishing and then acting like he'd been there all along? It was amazing. I mean, that's a moment right there Now, St. John's not Cinderella, but that's a Cinderella story, and it's fun to see and hear about the mid-major kids who have success.
So I already asked Ari Temkin this question today. I'm going to pass it to you as well. If you have to put all your eggs in the basket of one of the remaining Big 12 teams, who do you believe in most?
I mean, Arizona's the best team remaining, and Iowa State's a close second for me.
What makes we saw Arizona against Utah State obviously yesterday, and their size and their length were problematic for the Aggies. Is that going to be the case even when we get Sweet 16, Elite 8, Final Four, et cetera?
Yeah, I mean, it's absolutely going to be the case. I mean, they have so many levels. They probably have 4 NBA players on that team. And then they've got arguably, the Big 12 player of the year, Jaden Bradley. They've got a senior guard, and you saw what he did at the end of that game. A couple of those shots he made were just stupid. I mean, Utah State played incredibly well. And by the way, if I leave Houston out of this conversation, I'm just an idiot as a basketball analyst, because Emmanuel Sharp and that team very easily could do something that they didn't do last year. And they could surprise everyone, and not everyone. They could surprise people and finish the season, and I wouldn't be surprised to see an Emmanuel Sharp as the Final Four MVP.
Is Bill Self coming back at Kansas?
Nah, you should be asking Bill Riley that question. Not that he has an inside track. We were in Bill's office. Bill Riley, my partner, my radio partner, I'm his sidekick. He got us an after the game we got to go through everything, and that place is amazing. And we kind of snuck into Bill Self's area. And I will say this, I think this team he really liked. This team really got along well. They had good chemistry. But I think he's tired, and he should be. He's been doing it for a long time. My heart says yes, he's coming back. My mind says no.
Okay, so we spent probably too much time on the show, even when you visited us, talking about the problematic nature of Darren Peterson's season for Kansas. And that might be one of the things that makes a coach tired. I think Bill Self managed it as well as you possibly can. And there was conversation like, but this is a lottery draft pick. Watch what he's going to do. He's going to flip the switch. He's going to turn it on in the NCAA tournament. And I'm a believer that as an athlete, you can't actually do that. Like that you don't just get an extra 10% out of bad habits or whatever. But did he help or hurt himself in the tournament?
I mean, I don't think he helped himself, but I think the article in The Athletic, which you may have read, really shed light onto what's going on with him. And he had a unique circumstance this year. And I think when he was a prolific in Napa as a high school player, there was no question he was the best player. But I would say it didn't help him. He looked not 100% still, and I think that's gonna speak volumes. But I think everything I've heard about him, like what I read in Athletic, was that he hangs out with the managers, and I think that's genuine, and he's a very kind person. And so from bringing a person on that seems to be kind towards other people and obviously has a lot of athletic talent, that can be a win-win, because if he gets healthy, who knows? Apparently the sky's the limit for him, but I don't think it helped him.
Sean, I always appreciate you lending your basketball expertise to the show. Thank you so much for stopping by.
Thanks, Sean O'Connell. I'm glad you had a vacation. Have a good week this week, brother.
You too. That's Sean Mooney. When you're trying to call Sean Mooney, don't accidentally call me, all right? Just a public service announcement out there for everybody. Don't pull a James Peterson.
Well, no, for no particular reason. No one did that, right?
That's awesome.
Oh, my gosh. Hey, we're getting back in the swing of things here, all right?
Look,
I've been off 2 weeks just like you have in this time slot,
and
right?
Look, I'm not killing it today either. I've already broken a pair of headphones, all right? Who knows what other errors I've already made.
Should we do the Dan Patrick thing where he tries to fire everybody up by clapping when we get off the rails? Come on, let's go.
I might need that. I'd love to hear from you, 877-353-0700. We had the Daily Dump coming.
Should we do – I was thinking about this. I'll bring it on the air. Well, you've got some stories you want to hit that are actually recent, but should we do also Daily Dump, like – Bam, 83-point game.
Yeah, like stuff missed?
Stuff you missed kind of stuff. Should we do that as the Daily Dump, too? It's like a 2-weekly dump here.
We could do a little bit of that. The things that we missed and when I say we, I mean I missed while I was away. Everyone out there listening is like, we didn't miss this, you moron. We were living our lives. Yeah, I'll give you an update on why I missed these things. It's the Sean O'Connell Show, ESPN 700, 92.1 FM. Valley Plumbing can handle your plumbing and drain cleaning needs. They can also handle all the HVAC. When I left to go on my gorilla trek, it was snowing, legitimately. Day of snowing, I was like, oh my gosh, are we going to make this flight? The connection is pretty tight. Snow. All right, so the heater was on. I come back, and there had been like 2 80-degree days, and it was 71 yesterday. So now AC is on. When you get those wild swings, right, you got to make sure that your HVAC systems are dialed in on every front. Valley Plumbing, the truck with the duck, can help you out with that. Go to valleyplumbing.com, make an appointment to get a checkup on your furnace, on your AC, on your vents, right there online. You could be doing your radio show and make that appointment. How do I know? Because I actually did that one day when I had a leak in a basement. All right. So check him out. Tell him OC sent you. In the category of daily dumb things that I missed while I was away, we already touched on one, the Morgan Scally donation, the gift to the Utah football program. Another one that I couldn't really understand what I was reading because it was the middle of the night in Uganda when I first saw this story. Bam Adebayo scoring 83 points. I was like, huh? What?
So obscure you don't even know how to pronounce his last name.
I was like,
Just messing.
did I say Adebayo?
Yeah.
Bam Adebayo. I do that all the time with Bam. Bam Adebayo scoring 83 points on what? How many free throws, James?
He made
42?
He made 36, which is a single game record, and he shot 43, which is also a single game record. Shaq, Wilt, all these other guys who got literally hacked all the time because they weren't great free throw shooters, they didn't even shoot that many free throws in a game before.
So, and there was this big debate. He's not Kobe. This ain't Kobe. Don't give him the respect. He didn't pass Kobe. It's just like, look, the NBA is different now. Defense is optional in a lot of these games. He did it against a tanking team, which I think is something that needs to be talked about more. But
again, teams didn't tank this way. Certainly when Kobe was playing, that wasn't exactly like an NBA championship caliber Raptors team he did it against.
Right.
So, yeah.
But good for you, Bam, I guess. I just don't see how this is going to go down as one of those, like, trivia questions when you're at Big Willie's, all right, on a Wednesday night, and you're playing bar trivia, and the sports category comes up, and they're going to be like, all right, in modern basketball, the highest single game point total belongs to, and everyone's going to want to jump at Kobe, right? And then there's going to be one guy in the corner who's like, no, it was actually Bam, and he scored a bunch of points at the stripe.
And then he's going to say, bam, got all of you.
And it just doesn't, I don't know. Good for you, Bam. That was a weird one for me because you're dealing with shoddy Wi-Fi, and it's the middle of the night, and you're adjusting to a significant, an 11-hour time difference.
You're got your head on a swivel because you don't know if a gorilla's going to attack you or not.
And you're like, what? Bam Adebayo? Anyway, that was a weird one.
So here's, I appreciate your perspective on that because while you're saying that you're not as impressed with it as you were with Kobe, right, 20 years ago.
Which, by the way, I like Bam. Like, I root for Bam a lot more than I ever rooted for Kobe.
But you're more impressed with Kobe's 81 than Bam's 83. Totally down with that. But at the same time, you're also saying you're not trying to delegitimize it. There are so many people. I guess this could be. I could save this for Friday, maybe when Bill Riley hosts the show. How about that? More on that later.
Yeah,
but during airing of grievances.
We'll get to that at some point.
But like I could say this for Friday for airing of grievances, but I hated the amount of, I think they all were Kobe fans being mad that one of Kobe's great marks went down. I think Luka Doncic, I think Kyrie Irving, I think Kevin Durant could have taken down this, and LeBron James could have scored 83, and the same people would have been like, well, he wasn't Kobe, so, like, it's obviously worse. It's not really 83 points.
If any of them had done it scoring almost half of those on free throws, the reaction would have been the same.
It should not be delegitimized. Now, if you want to compare the two and say Kobe's was more impressive, sure, great. Don't say that Bam didn't deserve to have 83 points the way he played. By the way, watching that back, the same amount of calls that stars get that make you roll your eyes was the same amount of calls that Bam got to get to the free throw line. There were not that many egregious, really, that's a foul kind of stuff. He was really aggressive, and the refs rewarded him for it. And by the way, the Washington Wizards might as well be the Washington Generals. They're not good. So yeah, they fouled a lot. So I just wasn't really here for the, hey, this was too much of a farce to be celebrated kind of stuff. So I appreciate that maybe you feel that way a little bit, but also that you're not going to rain on the parade.
Go ahead and celebrate it. It just is like, it's one of those things where it's a regular season accomplishment, single game accomplishment against an aggressively tanking team, and done in a kind of quirky, unorthodox fashion. So, like,
Absolutely.
it's going to go down in the NBA record books, and it should, but it's a weird footnote. It's not like this makes you one of the best players of your era.
Absolutely
It's
not.
like, and the reason, like, Bam doesn't have he doesn't have icon status the way that Kobe. He never will.
He won't
have icon status the way that Kobe does.
He will locally with the Miami Heat, but that's not the same.
And probably not because of this.
No.
You know, so it's just like that's what it is. In the grand scheme of things, this is a trivia answer, where Bam now is the answer to the single highest point total in an NBA basketball game. Like, okay, cool, 83, good job, bud.
Yeah,
Much more interesting for me was the impasse that was reached and then pushed through and then almost strike and then not a strike and then, okay, we're going to get a deal done. The WNBA salary cap going up 400 and something % is pretty crazy. And league minimum salaries approaching $300,000 instead of what is now in most states and in most major metropolitan areas like a barely livable wage that professional athletes in the WNBA were making before. That's much more fascinating to me. It's fascinating for two reasons. One, good on these women for demanding what they felt they were worth and sticking it out in the negotiation to try to get exactly what they were worth. That fascinates me. That's great. I don't know how they can make the numbers on this work long term. It has always been a subsidized league. I know they have a new television rights deal that has a lot more commas and zeros than it used to. So that's great. But this is a massive, massive increase in the money out for these franchise owners, right? The other thing, and probably the most interesting thing about the new WNBA collective bargaining agreement, and you're going to have one of these teams at some point in Salt Lake City. So even if you're rolling your eyes that I'm talking about it right now, it is going to affect your local sports market at some point. The league maximum sticking at $1.5 million. If I am Breanna Stewart, if I am Caitlin Clark, obviously, if I am Elena Delle Donne, if I am Sky Diggins, if I'm like any of these people, Caitlin Clark is the one that you can always throw out there, and she's going to get her endorsement money. Paige Beckers, like, we're going to talk about if you're Angel Reese, you're getting money from your shoe deal. Asia Wilson has her shoe deal as well. Great shoes, by the way. The league maximum being $1.5 million when you are the actual driver of everybody else's economic engine here is ultimately a really crazy disservice to the top players in that league. And the fact that we're not debating that, hearing about it, talking about it is wild to me. Because, again, it's great that the rank and file are now going to be making $300,000. I love that Alyssa Peely is going to be making $300,000 a year instead of $60,000 a year. I love that. The idea that that's happening across the league while a nominal increase comes the way of Caitlin Clark and Paige Beckers and Angel Reese and Cam Brink, that's bananas to me. Can you imagine if Tom Brady's salary was $1.5 million? If Patrick Mahomes made $1.5 million? If LeBron James made $1.5 million and the last person in the starting lineup, or the last person on the bench for that matter, was making $300,000? thousand. It's just interesting. I don't know. I didn't spoiler. I didn't dive into WNBA numbers really aggressively while I was in Uganda, but seeing that deal get done, that was the number sitting at the top was the most interesting one to me, that the league maximum, it's not like MLS where they've decided we're going to have some outliers here. We're going to do these like designated player type contracts. That would be the thing for me that made most sense in the WNBA, but that's not how they're doing it. And I hope the numbers can work, and I hope the league continues to grow. I think it's good when you have all these, when you have opportunities for athletes, male, female, whatever. I think that's wonderful as long as the economics support it. And the last thing you want to see, especially if you're a dad of girls who wants them to be able to watch, high-level success in the athletic field and the financial stuff that comes from success in the athletic field as they grow. The last thing I want is for the haters to try to be sitting there dunking on the WNBA 5 years from now, because this moment that they're having right now did not continue and was not as sustainable as you hope it was. And the numbers now make less sense even than they did before. Like, television deals are going to drive all of this. Endorsement deals make up the gap for those league maximum players. But, there's already been a bunch of cities that have shut the doors on their WNBA franchises when they were paying the players $40,000 a year. It's a big ask now that we're talking about $300 at least per year per player.
I think that's why a 5-year deal and not like in other leagues we've seen much longer CBAs at times. Sometimes around 5 years or shorter, but a lot of times longer than that. I think that the 5-year deal is a pretty good, gives the league and the players enough time to see if the moment that they're having is sustainable and they can grow from where they are, which is they've grown so much in the past couple of years, largely due to Caitlin Clark. 5 years gives them a chance to see if they can continue to grow, but also it's short enough to where it's like, hey, we actually signed another record-breaking TV deal in this time. After the last one was record-breaking for us, so we can actually give players more of the revenue that we agreed to, more revenue than we agreed to in the last one, and only 5 years has passed. So it's not like, certainly that could be a couple years where they're like, man, I'm only making, I'd prefer to make this a whole lot more that we're going to make in the new CBA 2 years ago, but it's not like they have to wait another 5 years to get there. You know what I mean? So I think that this is a good window for each side to see how things are going to play out. Hopefully they continue to play out in the positive direction for the league and the players.
Okay, I have to sneak this into the Daily Dump because I know people are not overly thrilled most of the time talking about NCAA wrestling tournaments, okay? But this is, we have Utah Valley University, by the way, sent 4 guys to nationals. Shout out to the Wolverines that represented. Great thing to see.
Out of the Big 12, by the way.
Oklahoma State they broke some records. They did some things that have never been done. They had 3 freshmen win national championships. There's a young kid named Jax Forrest, okay? He was an early enrollee at Oklahoma State, and he became the first undefeated true freshman national champion in the history of college wrestling. Let me say that again. True freshman, undefeated, national champion. The first one ever in the history of college wrestling. You've had freshmen win national championships. You've had people be undefeated. Never before has it been a true freshman. Add on top of that, he's an early enrollee. That means in the 3rd weekend of March, he won a collegiate national championship. In the 2nd week of December last year, he was still in high school. He enrolled at Oklahoma State in January. and before even putting in a full season of college wrestling, qualified for and won a national championship. And I know it's hard to put it into context because people, myself included, I was never a collegiate wrestler, but I've spent enough time around them in the MMA world and training with some of them in the MMA world. They are freaks. If you are an All-American caliber wrestler, a high school All-American, a college All-American, it means you can take down anybody on the planet. It means that, like, nobody has a hope against you. This kid did it when he was supposed to still be in high school. This is the equivalent of AJ DeBonsa enrolling early at BYU last January instead of finishing out his high school career, enrolling early and then becoming like tournament MVP in the Big 12 and potentially, I mean, undefeated in basketball and undefeated in an individual sport like wrestling are totally different. But you can't even put it into context properly. January enrollee, true freshman, just like, oh, I'm moving out for the first time. I've never really done this. This is a kid who's got, I mean, the most legendary athlete for me in all of college sports belongs on the short list, even if you're not a wrestling fan. Cael Sanderson, Iowa State University, former Wasatch Wasp legend, current head coach of the Penn State Nittany Lions. He went 159-0 as a collegiate wrestler. He was a 4-time national champion. He ended up being a gold medalist in the Olympics in Athens. Like, he is a legend. He is an American sports hero, okay? He's the greatest collegiate wrestler ever to live. He redshirted. He didn't enroll early out of high school. He finished his high school career and life, okay? He won another state championship in the state of Utah instead of doing it in college. He finished his senior year. Then he enrolled at Iowa State. Then he wrestled as a redshirt guy in a couple of tournaments because the rules are that you can't represent your actual school. So you're like an unattached independent wrestler that's redshirting. It's kind of like it's like before the football teams had 4 games where you could still maintain your red shirt. In college wrestling, they always had that. So Cael Sanderson took a year to develop his body, to make sure that he grew into a college wrestling kind of like physicality. And then the next year he won it at 184 pounds. Then he won it at 197 pounds. And he went down as one of the greatest wrestlers ever to do it in the world ever, and certainly in the United States as a collegiate wrestler. This Jax Forrest kid, he did not take time to get himself physically ready. He went from high school going to like homecoming dance to 4 months later being a national collegiate wrestling champion at 133 pounds. Do you know how insane that is as an athletic accomplishment? Have we ever had an early enrollee true freshman win a Heisman Trophy in college football? The answer is no, right? It's that.
We've had a couple redshirt freshmen.
Correct.
Manziel and Jameis. But that's it, right? Or do we have another one?
And I'm not sure if those guys were early enrollees either.
No.
Like, in order to do that, if we're going to use that example, you would have to enroll in January, and then the next January, so you'd have a full year in college football, and then you win that Heisman Trophy. This dude was in college wrestling for 3 months, less than 90 days, and he went undefeated and won a national championship. That is banana sandwich. We are living in the upside down, that there are people out there that are capable of doing that. Good for you, Jax Forrest. I hope that someday he makes $50 million as an MMA fighter, because it's the best base of talent for wrestling. You get to decide whether or not the fight happens standing up or on the ground or whatever. I bet you this kid right now, with that level of wrestling ability, I bet you could put him in the UFC. You could put him in the PFL. He probably doesn't even know how to throw a punch. He could probably win some fights just because he's that dominant of a wrestler at 18 and a half years old.
It's an incredible story. And I'll take this chance to tease a little bit later in the week, OC. We had a Utes club wrestler reach out who's also got an incredible story. We're getting him on Wednesday. Dr. Joseph Arrington, shout out to him. He's also wrestling for the University of Utah in a college nationals competition, not NCAA sanctioned, but just outside of that because Utah doesn't have an NCAA sanctioned wrestling team. They do have a club team,
UVU's
though.
the only one.
Yeah.
UVU is the only university in the state. Yeah.
But anyway, this guy has an incredible story. Dr. Joseph Arrington, he's coming on the show. He's coming on the show Wednesday to talk about a Ute connection, another great wrestling story.
Love it. So congrats to Oklahoma State, to Jax Forrest. Wowza. Up next, a tank race update. Yes, we're getting to that time of year. All right, you've got one professional team chasing a playoff appearance. Go Mammoth. You've got another one, once again, looking for the top available odds in an upcoming NBA draft lottery. So a tank race update for your Utah Jazz, who are active tonight. We'll get to all of it on ESPN 700 and 92.1 FM. All right, if you're trying to watch teams trying to win, like in March Madness or the Utah Mammoth or whatever, go down to Big Willie's. They've got big screens all over the bar. They've got an incredible bar food menu. They've got drink specials that they run every single day. They keep the specials under $4, which is outrageous. They've got an incredible pool hall, the best one in Utah. That's not me telling you that they were voted best pool hall in Utah, the number one sports bar in Utah as well. 1717 South Main, Big Willie's is absolutely the place to go watch any sporting event that you're interested in. Fights, basketball, football. We don't have a lot of that going on right now, obviously. They'll have MLS soccer games. They've got it all down at Big Willie's, the NHL. And when you're watching the Utah Jazz tank, if you're trying to feel better about it, no better place than going down to Big Willie's, maybe having a little bit of fun with the trivia, maybe some karaoke, get your mind off the fact that your favorite team, the Utah Jazz, aren't even trying too hard to win. Jazz Raptors tonight at the Delta Center on K-Jazz.
That's definitely will help the tank effort. The Raptors are a good team this year. They're going to make the playoffs. Pacers Magic, that one not a very winnable game for Indiana. Magic are also a playoff team in the East. That's at 5 o'clock. At 5:30, Grizzlies Hawks, similar situation there. Probably a Grizzlies loss there at 5:30. Warriors Mavs at 7. You can hear this one on the station, ESPN 792.1 FM. It's another way to pay attention to teams actually trying to win. You can listen to games here. Although tonight it's Warriors Mavs, and one of those teams is trying to lose. That happens to be the Dallas Mavericks. Nets Blazers at 8 o'clock. So those are your games tonight. Winnable game for the Mavs, I'll say, because Steph is still hurt. Moses Moody, one of their rotational wings, also out. Al Horford, one of their bigs, also out. Kristaps Porzingis is probable, but injury decimated Warriors roster. So Cooper Flagg has a big game. Could end up being a win for the Mavs and helps the Jazz out a little bit. You want to hear the update in the standings, OC? Tank race standings.
Let's see what the tank race standings look like. Now,
Pace,
remember, you're kind of upside down when you're talking about these standings.
Right. So if you're the worst, you're at the top, and when we're saying games back, you're technically games ahead, but we're calling them games back. So the Pacers are first at 15-56. They just barely went ahead of the Wizards, who are one game back, 16-55. Nets 17-54, 2 games back. Kings, worst team in the West, are fourth, 19-53, 3.5 games back of the top spot, 1.5 games back of the top 3. Remember, OC, with the flattened lottery odds, top 3 all have the best chance at the number 1 pick. So they're right there. Jazz just behind them, 21-50, 6 games back. Not really a shot at getting to the worst record in the league like they had last year, but an outside shot of getting into the top 3 or 4. They're 4 games back of the top 3, 2.5 games back of the top 4. I'll explain why that's important, that last part, in a second here. Mavs just behind the Jazz, 23-48. Grizzlies just behind them, 24-46. Pelicans just behind them, 25-47. By the way, no incentive for the Pelicans to tank. They don't even have their first-round pick, so they're just bad. But they're among the 8 worst records in the league. Now, OC, why does it matter how far back the Jazz are of the Kings here?
Why would we care about our distance from Sacramento?
Yeah.
Which, by the way, not that far of a drive. Not as far as you'd think.
Not that far of a drive. So if you remember last lottery where the Jazz were the worst record, but they ended up with the 5th pick. That's the farthest they could fall. That's the same thing throughout the lottery. So the Jazz are in 5th right now, meaning that they could, it's the lowest percentage chance, but they could end up with the 9th pick, which their pick is top 8 protected, meaning that 9th would mean it's going to OKC. So they are right there, 2.5 games back. Now only 10, 11 games left here for most teams. But 2.5 games back of being guaranteed to keep their first-round pick, which would obviously be mission accomplished around here for the Utah Jazz. Now, we're all dreaming of A.J. DeBonsa. For me, that's just gravy. What the actual eye on the prize that everyone needs their eye, that everyone in that organization has their eyes on, is we just want to make sure that we don't fall lower than 8th. And they can do that by passing the Kings in these tank race standings. The Kings, by the way, won their most recent games. So they are on a hot streak. Let's go.
Let's go.
It felt good to have the tank race update back here. Much later than last season, but that's okay.
Well,
it's appropriate to have waited this long.
They're a much better team this year.
Yeah,
They're like 3 games better.
5 spots better than last year. Come on now.
We got to get a sponsor for the tank race update. Like, we got to find a porta potty company, or maybe like a septic tank company.
Yeah,
For the tank race update,
or maybe a gas station. We can make gas jokes.
Yeah,
I don't know.
go Jazz. Lose with dignity.
Raptors tonight at 7. Once again, watch it on K-Jazz. Go to Delta Center. Have a good night at the Jazz game. Watch them lose.
Okay, we're going to take a quick one here. Sammy Mora is going to join us on the other side. Talk a little Utah spring football. Get her reaction to the news that broke last Friday as well. It's the Sean O'Connell Show on ESPN 700, 92.1 FM. Hour 3 of the Sean O'Connell Show. Sammy Mora joins us to help fill the gaps on spring ball. Spring football coverage brought to you by Big Willie's, Game Day Men's Health, Burger Fusion, Valley Plumbing, Heating, and Cooling. Sammy Mora, welcome back to the show. How are you?
I'm doing great, OC. How are you? It's been a long time since we've had one of these little chats.
I know. I've been gone for a couple of weeks, and it's very weird to be jumping back in now while spring football and March Madness are in full swing, but here we are. So let's start with spring football, and I want to start with the actual football part of it. Some increased access, some different approach from Morgan Scalley, at least in certain instances here. And I know that talking with people who got to attend the open practice and got to do the chalk talk and things like that, it's been described as a breath of fresh air and something we've been asking for. I campaigned aggressively for it when Morgan got the job and he laughed at me, but it's good to know that at least for now the doors are a little bit more open on observing practice. So tell me your thoughts on getting that increased access.
It's very much like you said. It is a breath of fresh air. I think that it's good because it makes us, like, we hear things from our sources and stuff like that, but to see things with your own eyes is a lot different than hearing it from somebody who heard it from somebody who saw something. That second, third hand information sometimes can get a little muddy, a little murky and stuff like that. So seeing these like players with our own eyes and making assessments of our own, I think is very beneficial because honestly, it makes us it gives us a better idea. Like, we're supposed to be insiders for a reason, and so seeing those things gives our takes a little bit more of validity, I would say.
So, from what you saw at open practice, it's you can always revise as these things progress. But who jumped out at you most, and did you see anyone with flashes that surprised you?
On the defensive side, Carson Kaufusi, he looks so much bigger. He looks more refined than last year. And I know last year was freshman year. There was acclimation periods and everything like that. But Carson was really, really, really strong on Saturday. He seems to have bulked up a little bit more. I know people use the phrase man strength. He seems to have kind of, found that over the off season. I'm really excited to watch him and what he does. He looked and I understand they're in shells, they're in helmets, there's no full pads, they're going up against each other and stuff. They're going up against, an offensive line that also is still in shells and pads, and you're doing thud work. But he really caught my eye really early in the whole practice on Saturday. And then offensively, it's kind of hard because there was a couple that stood out. I'm not going to go with the usual suspects of, Devin, Wayshawn, Bird, those guys. I think, Braden Pagan looked really good. Kyrie Scholes looked good. Steve Chavez Soto looked the part. He passed the eye test as well. So I like what I saw from a lot of the newer guys on the offense. And, that defensive tackle room looks to be, improved from my vantage point. There's a lot more size, and there's a lot more burst, and there's a lot more versatility than there was last year.
It's tough when we're talking about, like when you see a receiver or a running back make a play, you can kind of extrapolate that and say, all right, well, that he jumped this high and he ran this fast, and I think that's going to work on Saturdays the same way it's working here in practice when you're going against your own team. It's a lot harder when it comes to that defensive tackle room and when it comes to an offensive line because your measuring stick is only as good as the people across from you. And in both the offensive line's case and to a slightly lesser extent, but still true, with the defensive line at the University of Utah right now, those are question marks that we're not really going to have great answers to until they're playing live reps against real competition. But you're a seasoned eye at this point, and you've seen guys as they get bigger, stronger, faster, more explosive. So you already told me about the defensive line. What about the offensive line? Because that is the unit that has to answer, I think, the largest number of questions, the most significant questions, because last year you didn't have any about the offensive line. As long as those guys stayed healthy, we knew they were going to be excellent, and they were. They were the best offensive line in the Big 12 and one of the best offensive lines in the country and got jobbed on the Joe Moore Award being finalists and things like that. But now you've got to fill those collective shoes. 10 big old pairs of cleats have to be filled along that offensive line. So what does that look like in the early goings from your eyes?
So actually, me and Dan Sorensen, also of UteZone.com, we split up practice. So I spent most of my time watching the defensive tackles, and he spent most of his time watching the offensive line. But from our little bit of our little debrief after the practice, Keith Olson and Solatoa Moiai are your two guys at guard from, we kind of expected that with their experience, what they bring to the table, stuff like that. And then I think it's gonna be interesting to see how those guys at the tackle and at center go. You have Zaraway Williams, you have Kelvin Obot, you have Cedric Jefferson, all battling for tackle. And then, Isaiah Kema, Alex Harrison, both who we expected to play center, might be battling it out there too. So it's going to be interesting to see how this goes. And like you said, it's kind of hard to have a measuring stick on the offensive line when you are, lining up against defensive tackles that, you can't hit. You can't go full speed when you're in shells and helmets. You're not hitting each other. You're not getting the push that sometimes you want to see and stuff, just because of the intensity that they're trying to go with and stuff. But I don't have as many concerns about the offensive line than I did 3-4 weeks ago. I think that there's going to be a slight learning curve because it's 5 brand new guys out there on that offensive line. But I think at the same time, I think that they're going to be good. They're going to get the job done. I don't think we're going to see the same intense. Well, where is the intensity on the offensive line? Jordan Gross is, watching him coach, and from what I've heard, he's hitting it out of the park. He's spending a lot of time showing by example, doing things that help these guys learn these things. But I think the offensive line is going to be fine. I don't think they're going to be top 5 in the nation like they were last year, but I think they're going to get the job done.
One of the big questions is, how do you utilize both Devin and Bird without having it be like a traditional quarterback battle? You got both guys to stay. There's NIL resources being spent on both, and I'm glad that we have both guys still on the roster. Any indication on what it looks like so far?
We saw both of them at practice and stuff, and so it's going to be interesting to see. There's I'm trying to figure out how to phrase this in the right way, but both guys, there's going to be. I think we're going to see similar things that we saw last year. I think we're going to see usage of both. QBR games, stuff like that. But it's a massive thing that you keep both, and I think that it's not been talked about enough is how good it feels to have Utah have a good starting quarterback and a good backup quarterback, because I feel like it's been years since Utah's had that. And it also, I said this over on the UteZone board a couple weeks ago, I said it feels really nice to head into a spring football and there's not some sort of quarterback 1 or QB2 battle going on that we have to keep intense watch on. Like, we know who's 1, we know who's 2, we know what both bring to the table. So it's gonna be fun to see how it evolves, because I know Mick Given he has a big focus on putting his players in the best position to succeed and using them in ways that they are good. It's very similar to what Jason Beck did last year. You're going to see a lot of continuity in that aspect of using this offense and using the weapons in the way that they thrive the most.
Sammy Moore, my guest here on the Sean O'Connell Show, managing editor over at UteZone. Any hangover, any effect, anything that you notice with this new news on the Kyle Whittingham exit, as far as it affecting the coaching staff, the team, most particularly Morgan Scalley, obviously, because he's the only one kind of directly involved in that conversation with the new emails that we got, and we've now had better insight on exactly what is being still paid out to Kyle Whittingham and the way that exit went. It's funny because we all talked about it and we all had our sources on it, and we just finally we got to read the emails and get a much clearer picture on exactly what it looked like. But were you able to tell whether it affected anyone that's still in the program at all?
I mean, so that came out on Friday. We saw Morgan Saturday morning for practice, and it was business as usual. He was jumping around with guys. He was participating in stretches. He was joking around with them. He was getting them amped and stuff. He was very active in practice. So honestly, I have no clue if there's any hangover from that, but I do think I think I'm at the point now where I'm like, I'm glad the emails are out and stuff, but also at the same time, what's in the past is in the past, and I'm ready to just kind of like, look to the future and see what the Morgan Scally era looks like. So, but yeah, from Saturday, there didn't seem to be any issue with, a hangover or anything about those emails with Morgan.
Well, I do think that's the only stance that any of us can really take on it now, right? Except besides just being bothered continually about the way it all went down, you just have to choose to pick it up and move it on at some point. And clearly the Whittingham side of that equation has done so. And I think Utah football with Morgan at the helm has done a good job of it, like internally in the actual locker room and things like that. So I'm glad to hear you say that there's no noticeable effect at all. When we talk about, the prognostication of the roster as a whole, right? We knew what the strengths were heading into last year. We knew what the questions were with some, a new offense coming in and a bunch of new offensive personnel coming in. I saw some highlights of Larry Simmons continuing what we saw from him at the end of last year and the chemistry building with Evan Dampier and things like that. And it's a question every single year what the passing game is going to look like. Morgan Scally has promised us that it's going to be, a more wide open approach in that front at least, but you have to have the personnel for it. So give me your thoughts on those guys in particular, the pass catching threats.
I said this again over on Utah, and I said this, I think last week, I honestly think this is probably the best wide receiver room Utah's had on paper in the last 10 years. And I know that's kind of a low bar to have considering what the passing game looked like in previous years under previous offensive coordinators and previous head coaches. But I honestly, if what we saw versus in the Vegas Bowl is what Morgan wants this offense to look like, then Utah's going to be in a really good position. Braden Pagan, big guy. I think he matches up, like, size-wise, I think he's very comparable to J.J. Buchanan, but at the same time, Pagan has a lot more experience that comes with him that Buchanan didn't have. Kyrie Scholes, fast. He is a fast dude. Like, he can hit that second gear and take it down to the house. Larry Simmons, as you said, Larry looked a little bit bigger when we were at practice on Saturday. He looked like he was a little bit more muscular and stuff, which I think will help him. Ricky Johnson, the Mississippi State transfer, he had a couple of good plays and stuff, so I'm excited to see how he factors into it. Creed Whittemore, really started picking up speed at the last half of last season. I expect some good things from him, and one that no one really talks about, Nate Johnson. He's listed still as an athlete on the roster, but when they posted it on socials, he was listed with the wide receivers. So how can Nate kind of be utilized in a lot of different ways, considering, he has that elite speed? So can you line him up in the backfield? Can you line him up out wide? What are they going to do with him in that capacity? Tight end is kind of the area where I have, a little bit more of a question as we continue this spring. Hunter Andrews obviously is back from his injury that knocked him out last season. How does he factor into this? Is he used more as an actual tight end, like a flex tight end, or is he used more as like an H-back, fullback type thing, or what did they do with him? I think Noah Benny, I almost said Jackson Benny for half a second. I think Noah Benny, he's probably going to be your tight end one when you get to the start of fall ball, but how can he take the next step in his game? He's been here before. He knows what Utah needs culture-wise. Can he acclimate to this offense quickly to get into that position to play? And I'm also excited to see how Bear Fisher, Utah's true freshman tight end from Arizona, how he factors into it. If he can get onto that field sooner, that adds an extra pass-catching playmaker for Devin. And I think that Bear has the potential to be, a really, really, really high-end tight end by the time his career is done.
Sammy, I would be remiss if I didn't ask you about the Red Rocks, another conference championship, back-to-back now in the Big 12. And look, at the national level, they have been a constant as contenders, but haven't won a championship in recent years. So when you look at the Big 12 champs as they move on to regionals and then hopefully, the finals beyond, what does that prognosis look like in your mind?
Well, if you would have asked me like Saturday after the Big 12, I would have said I'm kind of stressed about regionals just because of, projected who would be where and what would be going on. But with the regional announcements that came out today, I'm actually feeling a little bit more confident about Utah's chances of making it to nationals. it'll be in Utah's meet. It'll be Utah, Alabama, Oregon State, and Denver. And beat Denver twice already this season. You know what they're about. Oregon State, ever since Jade Carey graduated, has really kind of fallen off. So that's going to be interesting to see. And then Bama, Bama's been one of those teams that's been climbing the last couple of years, and they're good, but they just seem to have these nights where they, kind of collapse. And it's going to be interesting to see specifically with Bama how they deal with crossing 2 time zones, since this regional will be in Corvallis. Does that affect them? What's going on with them there? And then, the other session, you're going to have UCLA, you're going to have Minnesota. The thing is you just need to be top 2. You need to be top 2 in your first session, and you need to be top 2 in the regional finals to make it to nationals. And I like Utah's odds. I think Utah can beat Alabama, and then you're going to need to just beat one of UCLA and Minnesota and Bama again to make it to regional, or to make it to nationals. I like their odds. I think this team is picking up speed when they need to the most. And the thing is the team that we saw in January is not the team that I saw on Saturday, for the most part. I will qualify that. Their bar set was not what you wanted to see, especially with Anna Potterio getting hurt and falling off the bars, and she ended up being okay afterwards, but she fell off. That usually is a high 9-9 score that kind of hurt the Utes, so they barely crack a 49 on bars, which is not great. But if you would have told me they still would have scored a 197.6 with that low score on bars, I would have laughed in your face in January, because it just felt like nothing was going right for that team back then. But now I think they're picking up speed. I think they're peaking when you need to. Avery Neff is Avery Neff. She is just lights out every single day of the week. Ella Zerbis has really, really, really been one of the more unsung heroes of this team this year. She's been just amazing on all 4 events for Utah. McKenna Smith, senior leadership. You love what she brings, especially on floor and vault, to this team. But I like their odds. I think that, they're in a good position. Being ranked number 12 nationally is not where you're usually used to seeing Utah. But honestly, I think it's fun to see this Utah team with a chip on their shoulder. We haven't seen this very often, where they are outside of the top 10, outside of the top 5, all those types of things. So it's a different type of Red Rocks team, and I think you can sense the different vibe around the program and in the locker room and talking with the girls of, we know what we need to do. We just need to do it consistently and do it our way. And if they can do that, I think they can make it all the way to nationals.
We're going to keep our fingers crossed for that. Go Red Rocks. Sammy, I'll see you up at Spring Ball soon. Thank you.
Thanks, OC. See ya.
Sammy Mora, Utes Insider. Dang, I forgot to ask her about Reese Ross, managing editor over at Ute Zone. Give her a follow on Twitter at S_Mora247. All right, there is a new market price for scoring receiving touchdowns in the NFL. JSN's got a new contract. I broke it down by his numbers, and there's an obvious local reason why we should be doing this, because Puka is up next. It's the Sean O'Connell Show, ESPN 700 and 92.1 FM. Welcome back to the Sean O'Connell Show. Glad to be with you again after some time off. I realize this is going to sound very first world problems. If any of you ever have an opportunity to get yourself to Africa to go on safari, you have to do it. I've been on a bunch of them now. It's like a passionate thing for me. I love going. This last one was as good as they're ever going to get. I think I have to stop going now because I'm never going to be able to top the one I just went on. But it is life-changing to see some of these creatures in their actual natural environment up close without glass and fences and stuff like that. So if you ever have an opportunity.
OC, can I just, is it okay if I read one of the texts you sent me about while you were there?
Yeah, sure.
I was like, how's the, I had a show question for you.
Yeah.
Asked you that. How's the trip? And I wasn't expecting you to respond, honestly. I was like, I'll send this. If he responds, great. If not, it can wait till he gets back. You responded, and then you said, awesome, was 6 feet away from a silverback today, inches away from a toddler gorilla. I mean, that must have been incredible.
It was incredible. And then
probably not the only time you were that close to these kids.
And then so that was after our first day of gorilla trekking. All right, we had to climb 3 hours up a mountain, and it was nice. It was like a good hard workout to get to them, which just made it feel that much more gratifying, right? And then we went the second day, was a much easier path to get to the gorillas. It was a family of 12 gorillas, and I shouldn't be this way, but I am this way. I wanted somehow to find a way that like I could make physical contact with a wild gorilla. Like, you're obviously not allowed to on purpose, but they're moving around. So if they touch you, you're fine. And
I didn't touch them, sir. He touched me.
And sometimes they do. If you watch the like YouTube videos of these gorilla treks, like sometimes a silverback will get bothered and it'll like push someone out of the way, or like one of the babies will come up and try to get things out of your backpack. And I was just like, I was hoping so hard that I was going to actually make physical contact with a wild gorilla. And it didn't happen on day one. We got really, really close. I was like, legitimately, I could have reached out and touched a silverback, which was bananas, right? And then the second day, twice, James, twice. First, a little baby ran past me and grabbed my leg. And then one of the young males, so not yet a silverback, but probably like the guide said maybe 10 or 12 years old, so about to be a silverback. He was probably 350, maybe 400 pounds, big old boy gorilla. He like kind of brushed past me. He didn't push me or anything. I was just standing stock still because he was on the move, and he like rubbed his shoulder and back against me as he like, get out of the way, dude. It was amazing. Anyway, I'm not here to just try to make you jealous, although I want you all to be jealous and find a way to get yourself there to do stuff like that, because it is life-changing. It is incredible. I'm very grateful to have, a cool job that allowed me to go, and to have the people in my life that wanted to come with me. Shout out to my wife, her family that all came. It was a really great trip. Anyway.
Real quick, what other animals did you make contact with or see?
No physical contact with anything else. We got very close with wild chimpanzees, which was also really cool. A bunch of different species of monkeys. My wife was like probably 18 inches away from a wild leopard. It was just like,
oh my gosh,
on the other side of the door. She was sitting in the front door of the safari vehicle.
Was that terrifying for her?
She was really scared, and I was sitting in the back, like probably bad protective instincts as a husband. I was just like, oh my gosh, that's so cool. I'm so jealous. And she was just like,
it's gonna eat me.
It's a leopard. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
We saw leopards, lions. I got to tell you one more thing. Okay. So we're in the southern Serengeti in Tanzania on the tail end of the trip, and it's a long, hot day. Everyone else decides they're going to drive back to camp. Okay. They're going to go back. They're going to turn in for the day. They're going to go have dinner. They're going to like shower up. And me and my wife and her mom and dad were the only people who were like, no, we want to keep going. We're going to stay until like the sun goes down, basically. So our guide takes us to this spot, and we see these two huge bull elephants, right? Two big bull elephants. We're like, wow, amazing. And we've seen elephants on the trip, but not this close. And we're just like really pumped about it. They start to get mad that we're there. So he's like, we should leave because they're going to, that's dangerous, whatever.
Get aggressive.
We're like, okay, cool. He drives up over the next little rise. It's a pretty flat area, but there's just like slight. He drives up over the next one, and there was 500 elephants. We're all excited about seeing 2 of them, and then it was just herd after herd after herd after herd after herd. Just unbelievable. You could hear the Jurassic Park music playing in the background. It was Lion King. It was unbelievable, and it was incredibly special. And man, it gives you chills because it's just God's creation, where it's supposed to be, how it's supposed to be, and you're lucky enough to sit there and witness it. And it was just truly, truly special. So if you get a chance, do it. If you need recommendations, hit me up and I'll give you what I can. This is the sports story I wanted to get to before we take another break, and then we'll do some crosstalk with Spence. By the way, Bill Riley is back. He's going to be filling in on select editions of the Sean O'Connell Show. The first one on Friday, he'll be at Wasatch Front Kia up in Ogden. Bill Riley, who obviously I took over for Bill when he went to work for the university directly, and because I'm traveling again for the PFL, we've got an event in Pittsburgh this weekend. I got to take Friday off, and we got permission from the university, and Bill was excited about doing it. So on some of these trips where I go and do my PFL thing, Bill's going to be filling in for me, which is hilarious because obviously he did the show so well for 20 years, and now he's got to come fill in for this schlub. But I love it.
Yeah.
So that'll be fun.
We're really excited about it here at the station. The thing I'll say about it is it's not going to be every day that you're gone.
Right. There's special editions.
So we're calling them special editions of the Sean O'Connell Show with Bill Riley. And the first one, again, this Friday. Go out and see him. Wasatch Front Kia in Ogden. And be sure to tune in. You'll hear a familiar open. I'll say that. Just a slightly adjusted familiar open on Friday. I'm really excited for that.
All right, defending Super Bowl champion and Offensive Player of the Year in the NFL, Jackson Smith-Njigba, who
Buckeye.
If you are a Ute fan, you have to hate him because of the Rose Bowl.
You don't have to hate him.
You have to. 4-year, $168.6 million contract extension, $120 million in guaranteed money, average annual value of $42.15 million. Okay? So I love this when we get a new high bar on contract value for particular positions, because you can start, if you do it the way that I do it, you can now tell yourself and you can tell the story of, all right, how much is that person's production worth? And JSN is one of those guys who I think we're going to see a lot of really good years out of him. I think it's reasonable for Seattle and for everyone else in the NFL to expect that this past year was not even close to being an outlier. I don't know that he's always going to be the leading receiver in the NFL, but I think he's going to be, a top 5, top 10 guy for a long time. And this is a relatively short-term contract. It's 4 years, but it's big-time money. Average annual value is $42 million plus, right? So we now have a price tag on what a receiving touchdown costs in the NFL, or a team is willing to pay when they have salary cap space for an elite wide receiver. And this obviously matters because Puka Nacua is kind of the next guy up as a top-flight young receiver, still on a rookie deal, and he's going to get, when it's his turn, he's going to get even more than JSN got, as long as he doesn't keep messing around outside of football and getting himself into trouble. But I don't know if you have JSN's numbers in your brain. Don't look them up, James. At $42 million per year, average annual value, what are the Seattle Seahawks paying JSN for each receiving touchdown if we say that he has consistent numbers for the next 4 years? Like similar or the exact same to what he did this year, how much are they paying him per touchdown?
Yeah, I do not know his touchdown.
Okay, he scored 10.
This year's 10.
He had 10 receiving touchdowns. He was not number one in the league. Devontae Adams was the number one receiving touchdowns catcher in the league.
So guaranteed he's getting 12 million a touchdown guaranteed, and up to about 17 million a touchdown.
Well, no. That's 120 is the life of the. I'm talking about per year.
Oh, per year. Okay.
So
yeah,
if you base it off the $42 million, he's making $4.2 million per touchdown.
Yeah,
that's like you go back 5 years and the top receiver, the top pay, it's like, all right, you're getting like $1.5 million per touchdown catch.
Yeah,
you're getting $1.5 million per sack, and then it went, okay, now the sack is worth $2 million. Now that touchdown is worth $2 million. All right. And then it went up to 3. And now we're looking at, for a wide receiver, top flight wide receiver, $4.2 million per touchdown. By the way, Puka had the same. He had 10 receiving touchdowns. He also added a rushing touchdown. So he scored that one too. But $4.2 million per touchdown. Nice, easy round figure because he only had 10 of them. This is the wild thing. Okay. If we're basing it on his $42 million plus per year, how much do you think he's making per catch, per reception? Jackson Smith-Njigba on $42 million a year. If they're expecting him to have the exact same numbers moving forward, what would you guess he's making per catch?
Like $250,
$352,000 per catch.
That really is insane.
Based on current production. And again, like the NFL, these teams can afford it. I think it's great the players are getting this money, but when you break it down this way, I mean, if you're if you're a great wide receiver in college football, if you're Larry Simmons playing for the University of Utah, you might be getting that for the year. And they want you to get like 60, 70 catches for that. He's making $352,000 per catch. If I ask you how much he's making per yard,
he had what? 1,700 yards, somewhere in there.
Yeah, just over.
So, yeah, I can't. I'm not good enough at math to be able to do that in my head.
It's bad to try to do on-air math anyway.
Yeah.
But yes, he had 1,793 receiving yards. That when you
almost 1,800 yards then. Yeah.
When you throw that number into $42 million per year, that's $23,424 per yard.
Good for him, man.
Good for you, Jackson Smith-Njigba. And again, this is a lot more interesting on the local level because Puka Nacua's projected contract is now this plus whatever they can get, right? Because he is a top 5 wide receiver in the league, just like Jackson Smith-Njigba is in every one of these categories. Their stats were remarkably similar, actually. And I already told you about the touchdowns. Jackson Smith-Njigba had the most yardage in the league. Puka was less than 80. He was 78 yards behind him.
Well, he also missed a handful of games this year. I don't know if Smith-Njigba missed that many games this year.
Puka missed one game.
He only missed one? Okay.
He missed the one game.
He may have left a couple other games early is what I'm thinking.
He fumbled fewer times. All right. That probably matters to some people. They both scored 10 touchdowns. JSN had roughly 2 extra yards per catch, but Puka had 10 more catches.
Yeah.
And again, in one fewer game. So, like, we're talking about these types of numbers for a kid from Orem.
Yeah. And a 5th-round pick, by the way.
A 5th-round pick.
Jackson Smith-Njigba, top 20 pick. So it's I heard some people talking about Jackson Smith-Njigba as a little bit of an underdog story. I'm like, the guy was picked in the top 20. He's not really an underdog. Not near as in the way that Puka Nacua is.
So what a yard of receiver production is equivalent to what in radio production? So, like, is that like per segment or is that per minute or something?
Maybe per 3 minutes. Shout out Nielsen.
Okay, yeah, per ratings point, per ratings segment. So just so you know, I'm looking for JSN money in the next contract negotiation. I want it to break down to $23,424 per whatever my equivalent of a yard is.
Per quarter hour.
This is
Per
wild.
counted quarter hour. The radio equivalent of that or the actual? Sorry, we'll keep that off there.
Not in like Broadway media dollars, in like actual. But I mean, look, incredibly productive player. The NFL is a Muncie printing license.
Bucks.
And isn't Bezos going to buy the Seahawks anyway?
He could do it. I mean, they're for sale.
Isn't he like? I think he's the lead horse in the race to buy. So this is just like Amazon money.
Yeah.
JSN, $23,424 per yard, $4.2 million per touchdown, $352,000 per catch if he maintains the production he had this year. If it goes down, by the way, he still is going to make this money as long as it stays in a relatively similar kind of realm.
Yeah, that's a lot of guaranteed money in that contract.
$120 million guaranteed.
Yeah.
By the way, Devontae Adams had 14 touchdowns this year. Dallas Goedert had 11 touchdowns. Both of those guys only had 60 catches.
Oh, wow.
So, I mean,
Adams was definitely more of a red zone threat than compared to the rest of his career as a pass catcher.
Puka Nacua and Jackson Smith-Njigba they tied for 6th in total in touchdown receptions.
So I'll say this: as great as Jackson Smith-Njigba is, and he showed all the promise he had coming out of Ohio State, all the promise that many of our listeners saw firsthand in that Rose Bowl, right? He finally showed that in the NFL. He was healthy for an entire season and all that, and it all came together for him. But it's 1 year. Puka's done this now. This is his second out of 3 seasons. Was this his third NFL season? Something like that. He had one where he missed a lot of it due to injuries. He had an incredible rookie year, and then he duplicated it, and it actually eclipsed it this year. So he and his reps ought to be asking for more than this when they're up.
Well, he's going to – I mean, that's how it works.
That's how
you
next
leapfrog
in
over and over. You leapfrog, right? And
next in line always gets more, but he should be like, hey, if that guy who only did it who only could show he could do it for 1 year, which incredible, no disrespect to him, but like I've had 2 of those now. Like he could be asking for way more than this, even not just the average like next guy in line kind of money.
Yes. It'll be his 4th season. Puka's
so this was just
season.
his 3rd. Then. Okay.
Yes. 23, 24, 25.
Yeah.
He played 17 games in 23. He played 11 games in 24. He played 16 games in 2025. And he averaged more than 12 yards per catch in each of those. He had 6 touchdowns, 3 touchdowns, 10 touchdowns. He's a remarkably productive player. He is undoubtedly one of the top 5 receivers in the league, and a bag is coming his way as long as he doesn't keep getting in trouble. All right. One last segment, a little crosstalk with Spence Checketts, the Sean O'Connell Show on ESPN 700 and 92.1 FM. Sean O'Connell Show, wrapping things up here on the Sean O'Connell Show. Crosstalk brought to you by our friends at Advanced Window Products, 801-850-9100. $2,500 off 10 windows or more. Nate Orchard, Jake Weber, tell them OC sent you. Wu-Tang Clan is coming to the Utah First Credit Union Amphitheater September 29th. 2 tickets to whoever can tell us. A St. John's player scored 2 points. Game-winning shot. 18 minutes in the game. Their point guard did nothing except in the scoring category except scoring the game-winning shot. What is that young man's name? 877-353-0700. Who scored the game winner for St. John's, his only 2 points of the game in March Madness? Spence Checketts in the Drive are up next here on ESPN 700. Hi, Spence.
Did you bring me back a baby gorilla?
No.
I was under the impression that was part of the plan. You were bringing me back a baby gorilla.
It was part of the plan.
Uh-huh.
But it turns out that mom and dad gorillas don't just allow you to take them.
Oh. Well, we should have thought of that part.
Should have.
So you attempted, and the adult gorillas were not on board with the attempt.
Actually, I would never even bother to attempt it. They're because the baby gorillas are so cute and they just look so happy and content in their environment. It's just like, all right, keep eating your little leaves and I'll come back later.
What an excellent opportunity for you to do that. I heard you talking about it on the way, and it sounded like you had an incredible time.
It was the best vacation I've ever taken in my life. It was the best trip I've ever been on in my life. It was beyond my expectations. Got so lucky. I've been incredibly fortunate on every safari I've ever been on to see things that I wanted to see and, not get rained out and stuff like that. And every time I'm like, all right, I'll keep my expectations low for this one because there's no way it can top the last one. Keeps going up. It's wild.
In vacations like that, like I'm about to go to Cabo and I'm just going to lay on a beach. I don't want to talk to anyone. Don't want to see anyone. Don't want to do anything. Going to leave the phone in the room. And those are fun. But vacations like you just took, they like change the way you think.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like it pays dividends throughout the course of the rest of your life if you are able to find the time and have the resources to just be in like the purest form of what this planet is. Those are the you can't quantify what those experiences are.
I don't know how our guides were able to make it happen, but we're in the southern Serengeti, which is just this massive, massive flat plain, right? And I sent you a couple the elephant videos from there.
It's awesome.
And that was kind of like the foothills leading into the flat plain. But we were there for 3 days, and we saw one other car with human beings that were not with our group.
Mm-hmm.
So you feel like you're not even on the planet.
Yeah, it's so cool.
You're not on Earth anymore because it's just you and animals and the people you're traveling with, and it was just, oh, man, I'll never get over it.
I might have to hit you up for, like, recommendations. I'd like to put some – I want to do it with my son. I want to take Connor.
You should.
Yeah. I'd like to do that.
Like, and it doesn't have to be – I mean, I was lucky enough to go on a nice long one where we did chimps, and then we did gorillas, and then we did the traditional, lions and lions and leopards and cheetahs and elephants and all that stuff. But even if you go to just one of those locations, it's totally life-changing. And, yeah, any recommendations? Anyway, 877-353-0700. It's the gospel of safari is one that I will spread around my life.
Would you have felt guilty if your poor bride was mauled by the leopard that you didn't give a rip about, that it was like 2 feet away from her?
Yes, okay. I would have felt very guilty.
Okay, fair enough.
And, in my heart of hearts, I would have tried to, like, pull a Tarzan and jump in and save her, but fail and then get myself injured as well.
You have children. One of you has to live.
People were giving us the side eye because we had to get on a bush plane a couple of times. And it was like, all right, I'm going to go on that one and you're going to go on that one.
Yeah.
Because, got to be a Boy Scout about it.
I have a friend who claims that I have a theory on this. There have been times where they've gone on vacation and they've elected to fly on different planes in case one of them does crash. I just don't think he likes his wife. I call PS. I just think he wants to travel by himself.
He's like, honey, you got to go just
Yeah.
in case
Yep.
on that one.
Mm-hmm.
And he's flying first class, and
Yeah.
she's in the middle row back.
The Sky Club prior to just smashing vodka teas and just enjoying himself. One of us has to live. No, you just don't want to fly with your wife.
You still want to fly with her.
Also, welcome back. Now I don't have to do 25-minute opening tip segments, so we can, eat into my show a little bit. It's a little bit of a different energetic ask.
Well, is that the 25-minute opening segment that you have to do in every other hour except for this one?
Yeah, I mean, to have one of them, to have a little assistance with one of them is never a bad thing.
All right. Yeah.
You missed quite the news cycle, Sean.
Well, I mean, yeah, I felt there was a small twinge of guilt with that until you're sitting 7 feet away from a male lion and you're just like, I don't feel that guilty now.
Yeah. I mean, I felt bad because I even sent you one work-related text. I'm like, dude, leave him alone. And it doesn't matter. I think we all have a level of self-importance in this business that is a facade. Like I can remember when Gordon, the news that Gordon Hayward was leaving came down. I was on vacation, and my boss is like, "You need to fly home tomorrow to be on air," and I did, and it was so dumb. I cut my vacation short by like 4 days
for Gordon Hayward
to do a Gordon Hayward segment because I was working for the Jazz broadcast team. He's like, "I need you on air tomorrow." I'm like, "All right, self-importance BS." But what we now know, Sean, is most of the wit stuff that we thought happened actually did.
Yeah, and it's good to have that clarity so that you can't, find yourself on the wrong side of somebody's opinion, because the opinions are all kind of out the window now. It's like we know what happened, and we can at least extrapolate some of the things that did not happen.
Yeah.
And, good work by everyone on that Utes beat for getting the public information requests out there and making sure that we all got to see some of those emails. And it's, the thing I said this at the beginning of the show, the thing I dislike about it is that it is kind of a distracting bomb to throw on the beginning of Morgan Scalley's first spring ball campaign, but it seems like they're handling it pretty well. It seems like he's handling it pretty well. And then, beyond that, it's just like, all right, now we know where leadership maybe could have done better.
Mm-hmm.
Now we know, I think, some places that Kyle Whittingham has been, I don't want to say disingenuous, but has been a little bit
kind of like flaky in a way.
Yeah, fair.
Yeah, like make your mind up, dude.
Yeah, that waiting game that everyone was being forced to play, and then the school and the athletic department feeling they had to react to that.
Yeah.
And just a really interesting and unfortunate storyline in this particular time, where you want to turn the page and you want to say, all right, good luck at Michigan.
Mm-hmm.
We're done with you.
Mm-hmm.
Now it's all about Morgan Scalley.
Yeah.
Well, it is, but you're also looking at it going like, we got to pay $13.5 million to this guy.
Yeah.
We got a couple Kyle Whittingham, Bobby Bonilla days coming at us for the next couple years.
Yeah.
That sucks.
Yeah, no, and you played there, and you were teammates with Morgan, and you're friends with him, so you know this. But over the past couple of weeks, we had a chance to go up to the facility for a little chalk talk with him.
And you did a great job with your first interview.
Thank you. And then lucky enough to be able to interview him last week that we played here, and it's also the new podcast. And again, I'm not telling you anything you don't know. He's just so ready for this. He is so ready for this, and the time is right for this to be his program. The feeling up there in the building is, I'm going to use the term refreshing a little bit. And I sat next to Jordan Gross when we were eating lunch, and he said something about Morgan that really, really struck me. He said, the great thing about working for Morgan is that you want to do a great job for him, but you don't feel like you have to do a great job for him. And I think, and look, I'm a Wit guy, love what Wit built here. I think there was a little bit of Monson used to call him the dark overlord, and I think there's a little bit of a feel when Witt's around, and it's not necessarily a bad thing because that's the intensity that makes him a great coach. And I'm not saying Morgan's not intense. I mean, look, you sit with Morgan's one of those guys, when you sit with him, you can feel it. He's got it in him, but I don't think he's a leader that's going to lead with any sort of fear. And I think it's probably safe to say Kyle did a little bit.
Yeah, for sure. And that's a leadership style that obviously worked incredibly well for Kyle Whittingham for a long time at the University of Utah. And Morgan's probably going to have to tweak and adjust his leadership style as he goes. Right now, I think what this team needs and what maybe this community needed was what he's giving it right now.
Well said.
So,
Yep.
but now you got to win some football games, and you got to start that now.
Yep.
Right? First quarter.
Results over vibes. As I always say, vibes are great, but give me results.
You do always say that.
Well, that's just how I'm built. Rooted in substance, not in flash over here, Sean.
Okay, Dan. Hey, Dan Lanning.
I loved that line. I use that all the time.
Yeah.
I'll use it to my family, my friends. You know, a little disingenuous, but when he said that, when he dropped that line prior to the Buffalo game, I'm like, that's badass.
Yeah.
Today we talk with our pads. I know that was built for social media, Dan Lanning, but it was still a really cool pregame speech.
Yeah, there's some irony in it where he was just like, make sure you get this on camera.
Oh, for sure.
I'm going to make sure you get this on camera where I talk about how we shouldn't be doing things for the camera.
Oh, wait, are you filming? Oh, man.
I'm gonna make fun of Dion for having everything be about the on-camera stuff. Make sure you get this.
It was perfect. Capitalized on that Dion momentum that certainly has died down now, but it was pretty hot for a while.
Yeah, hopefully Dion's health is better.
Yeah. Well
Anyway,
said.
we got lots to talk about for the rest. It's great to be back. Thanks for everyone who held it down here, especially Spence Checketts. Stay tuned on
Good
The
to see you, bud.
Drive next. ESPN 700, 92.1 FM.